The first scream tore through the forest just after midnight, and it didn't sound human. Claire froze, her fingers digging into the rough bark of the ancient pine she'd been leaning against. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and impending rain, suddenly tasted of copper and raw fear. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a trapped bird trying to escape. Just an animal, she told herself, the mantra she'd repeated since she'd taken this cursed night shift nanny job. It's just the woods. It's always just the woods. But the woods surrounding the Blackwood estate were different. They were too quiet, then too loud. They watched. Another sound followed the scream, a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the ground and up the soles of her boots. It was close. Too close. The security detail was supposed to patrol these tree lines. Where were they? "Liam," she whispered into the dark, her voice swallowed by the oppressive silence that had descended. The 4-year-old was safe inside, asleep in his canopy bed. She'd checked 3 times before stepping onto the terrace for a breath of air she didn't really need, just a moment away from the suffocating opulence of the mansion. That was her first mistake. Leaving the French doors ajar, even just a crack, for the illusion of a quick retreat. A twig snapped to her left. Claire didn't think. She moved, slipping back through the terrace doors and closing them with a soft, final click. Her hands trembled as she engaged the heavy brass lock. The grand living room, all vaulted ceilings and cold marble, felt like a cage. The only light came from a single Tiffany lamp by the oversized fireplace, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to reach for her. Get to Liam's room. Lock that door too. Call the main gate. Her practical nurse's training kicked in, overriding the primal terror. She crossed the room, her socked feet silent on the Persian rug. The house was a maze, but she knew the way to the East Wing nursery by heart after 2 weeks of caring for the quiet, solemn little boy. She was at the foot of the grand staircase when the front door exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. Splinters of dark oak rained across the foyer. A figure filled the shattered doorway, backlit by the moon, immense and silhouetted in fury. Claire stumbled back, a gasp trapped in her throat. He stepped into the light, and the world narrowed to him. He was easily 6.5 feet tall, shoulders straining against a black tactical jacket that was torn in several places. Dark, wild hair fell across a forehead smudged with dirt, and was that blood? His eyes found hers instantly, a shocking, bright amber that glowed with an unnatural light. They weren't human. They were Predator's eyes, and they pinned her to the spot. This was Noah Blackwood, Liam's father, the reclusive alpha of the Blackwood pack and her employer. She'd seen him only in passing, a dark blur barking orders into a phone, always leaving, always returning long after midnight. He'd never acknowledged her beyond a curt nod. Now, he was looking at her as if he could see every secret she'd ever buried. "Where is he?" Noah's voice was a graveled snarl, deeper than she remembered, layered with a vibration that made her teeth ache. "Mr. Blackwood, the door. Where is my son?" He took a step forward, and the air pressure in the room seemed to change. A scent rolled off him, pine, winter frost, and something wild, something that made the hair on her arms stand up. It was terrifying. It was compelling. Claire forced her spine straight, finding her voice. "He's asleep in his room. He's perfectly safe. What's happening?" His gaze raked over her, assessing, dismissive, then sharpened again. "You're the new nanny. Claire." He said her name like he was tasting it, and a flicker of something unrecognizable crossed his fierce features. "Get upstairs. Lock his door. Do not open it for anyone. Do you understand? Anyone." "Why? What's out there?" She held her ground, a habit born of dealing with panicked patients' families. A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Nothing you need to understand. Just obey." The command in his tone was absolute, an alpha's order. It should have rankled her. Instead, a shiver, hot and cold, raced down her spine. A new voice, smooth as poisoned honey, slithered into the foyer from the broken doorway. Noah, running home to check on the pup. How paternal. A second man stepped through the wreckage. He was leaner than Noah, dressed in immaculate dark jeans and a leather jacket, his blonde hair perfectly styled. He looked like a CEO, not a man who prowled midnight forests. But his eyes, a pale, icy blue, held the same predatory gleam. Andrew, Noah growled, turning his body subtly to place himself between Claire and the new threat. You've crossed a line, coming here. A line, Andrew chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. You drew the line in the sand, brother, when you took what was mine. Brother, Claire's mind reeled. She inched backward toward the stairs, her training screaming at her to get to her charge, but her feet felt rooted. The dynamic between the two men was a live wire, crackling with hatred and a history she couldn't fathom. I took nothing. She made her choice, Noah said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. The temperature in the foyer seemed to drop with it. Choices made under an alpha's compulsion aren't choices, Andrew spat, the veneer of civility cracking. And now you have an heir. How convenient, while my bloodline ends. Your obsession ends. Tonight, this is between us. Leave the humans out of it. Noah's amber gaze flicked to Claire for a fraction of a second. A warning, a dismissal. Andrew's icy eyes followed the look, and a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. Ah, is this the new one? She smells interesting, not entirely mundane. Did you screen her, Noah? Or are you getting sloppy in your old age? Noah's growl was pure animal threat. The sound resonated in Claire's chest. Claire, go, now! This time she ran. She took the stairs two at a time, her pulse roaring in her ears. Behind her, the confrontation erupted. You sent your mongrels to scream in my woods to lure me out, Noah accused. The words barely audible over the sound of shattering porcelain as something was thrown. A test? You left the pup unprotected. With a human, Andrew taunted. Sentiment is a weakness, Noah, one I will exploit. Claire reached Liam's door, fumbled with the handle, and burst inside, locking it behind her. The room was lit by a soft nightlight shaped like a moon. Liam was sitting up in bed, his dark eyes wide and awake, holding a stuffed wolf. He didn't look scared. He looked aware. Claire, he whispered, the bad man is here. Her blood went cold. What bad man, sweetheart? Uncle Andrew, he smells like metal and mean. How could he possibly know that? She sat on the edge of his bed, pulling him close. It's okay. Your dad is here. Daddy will make him go away, Liam said with simple faith, burying his face in her sweater. He smelled of baby shampoo and something else, something green and alive, like crushed leaves after a rain. It was a comforting scent, at odds with the violence downstairs. A crash echoed, followed by a roar of pure rage that was utterly inhuman. The house shook. Liam flinched. Is Daddy turning into the wolf? He whispered. The question hung in the air, absurd and terrifying. Claire's mind rejected it. Metaphor, it's a metaphor. A family nickname. But the sounds, the glowing eyes, the way Andrew had said she smells interesting, another sound joined the chaos, the distinct roar of engines and slamming car doors. Voices shouted outside. Relief flooded her. The security team. Finally, the sounds of combat below ceased abruptly. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. They stopped outside Liam's. Claire, it was Noah's voice, rough and breathless. Open the door. She didn't move, holding Liam tighter. It's me. Andrew is gone, for now. A heavy thud, as if he'd leaned against the doorframe. Please. The raw edge in that please undid her. She gently disentangled from Liam and went to the door, unlocking it but only opening it a crack. Noah stood there, his jacket gone, his white t-shirt torn and stained with dark patches. A fresh cut bled above his eyebrow. His amber eyes were still blazing, but the wild light was receding, leaving behind an exhaustion so deep it looked like pain. He looked past her to Liam, and his expression softened for a heartbeat. "All secure, Alpha," a woman's voice called from the hallway. A tall, severe-looking woman with a dark braid and sharp eyes appeared behind Noah. Cassandra, the head of security Claire had met once. Her gaze swept over Claire, analytical and cold. "Perimeter is re-established. He retreated with his betas. We have 2 injured." "See to them," Noah said, his eyes never leaving Claire's face through the crack in the door. "Then report." Cassandra nodded and vanished. "You can come out," Noah said, his voice now a tired rumble. "It's over. For tonight." Claire stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her to shield Liam. The hall was dim, but she could see the damage on him clearly now. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." He waved a hand, then winced. The movement pulled the fabric of his shirt, and she saw the edges of a massive, livid bruise already forming on his ribs. It looked like the aftermath of being hit by a truck. "That's not nothing. You need to clean that cut at least. I have a first aid kit in my sitting room." It was automatic, her caregiver instinct overriding her fear. He studied her, a strange intensity returning to his gaze. "You're not screaming, you're not demanding answers, you're offering medical aid. I'm a nurse, and you're bleeding on the antique runner." The words came out before she could stop them. A ghost of a smile touched his lips there and gone. "Practical, I hired a practical human." Human. The word was a deliberate marker, a boundary. He followed her to the small sitting room adjacent to the nursery. She fetched the kit, her hands steady now, all business. "Sit," she instructed, pointing to an armchair. To her surprise, he obeyed. She knelt before him, wiping the blood from his brow with an antiseptic wipe. He didn't flinch. His proximity was overwhelming. That wild, frost and pine scent enveloped her, mixed with the tang of blood and sweat. It was primal. It stirred something low in her belly, a heat that shamed her. His eyes watched her face, tracing her movements with an unnerving focus. "Who is Andrew?" she asked quietly, focusing on applying a butterfly bandage. "My half-brother, head of the rival Ridgecrest pack." The answer was blunt, a truth offered that explained nothing and everything. "And he wants Liam." Noah's hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her wrist. His grip was firm, not painful, but electrifying. A jolt shot up her arm, his skin was fever-hot. "He wants what Liam represents, my legacy. My weakness." His thumb brushed over her pulse point, feeling the frantic beat there. "You protected him, you didn't panic. You got him to safety and locked the door. It's my job. It's more than that." He released her wrist slowly, as if reluctant to break the contact. "Cassandra's report said you were outside. You heard the scream." Claire sat back on her heels, the memory chilling her again. It didn't sound human. It wasn't. He held her gaze, allowing the truth to hang between them. A challenge, a test. The pieces, impossible and insane, clicked into place. The secrecy, the isolated estate, the nocturnal schedule. The way the staff moved with silent, preternatural grace. Liam's strange knowingness. Is Daddy turning into the wolf? "You're not your all." She couldn't say it. "We are what the stories whisper about," Noah said, his voice low and gravelly. "And now you know. That knowledge is dangerous, Claire, for you, for Liam." Fear, sharp and fresh, pierced her. "Are you going to kill me?" The question came out in a whisper. His amber eyes flared. Something dark and possessive swirled in their depths. "No." The word was final, absolute. "You are under my protection now. By being here, by caring for my son, you are part of the pack's orbit. That makes you a target for my enemies. But it also makes you mine to protect." "Mine?" The word vibrated in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. A sudden, sharp pain lanced through Claire's temple. She gasped, pressing her fingers to her forehead. Behind her eyes, a flash of imagery. A pair of glowing blue eyes Andrew's, a dark forest path, the scent of wet metal and decay. It was gone as quickly as it came, leaving a throbbing ache. Noah was on his feet in an instant, his hands on her shoulders. "What is it? What did you see?" "And nothing, a headache, just stress." She looked up at him, confused by his urgency. He searched her face, his expression a storm of conflict. "You saw something, tell me." "Just blue eyes, it was nothing." He went very still. Andrew's eyes, a low growl built in his chest. "He can't mark you, he has no right." "Mark me, what are you talking about?" Before he could answer, a soft chime came from his pocket. He pulled out a phone, his face hardening as he read the screen. "I have to go, pack business." He looked from the phone to her, the Alpha's mask slamming back into place. "Stay in the house. Cassandra will be outside this door. Do not leave this wing for any reason. Do you understand?" She nodded, numb. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway, a massive, wounded silhouette. "Claire." "Yes." "The full moon is in 3 nights. Whatever you hear, whatever happens, do not leave your room after sunset." His gaze burned into her, a mixture of warning and something that looked like anguish. "Lock your door, for your own good." And then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall, leaving her alone with the scent of pine and frost, a throbbing in her head, and the terrifying, thrilling knowledge that the man who paid her salary was a monster from a fairy tale. And little did she know, as she heard the front door close and the engines of several vehicles roar to life, that the pain in her temple was not from stress. It was the first, faint whisper of a bond she never asked for, a connection to a world of moonlit savagery that had just decided she belonged to it. The game had begun, and she was already a pawn on the board between 2 alpha brothers. But as she touched the spot on her wrist where Noah's fingers had burned her skin, a traitorous thought arose. What if she was meant to be so much more? Downstairs by the shattered front door, Cassandra picked up a single, long-stemmed thorn from the floor, its tip stained black. It was not from any rose that grew in these woods. She sniffed it, her eyes narrowing. Wolfsbane, Andrew's calling card. And the faint, lingering scent of it was not just here. It was upstairs, too, clinging to the new nanny's shoes. The message was clear. The threat wasn't over. It had just found a new, human-shaped doorway. Cassandra pocketed the thorn and looked toward the east wing, her expression unreadable. "What are you, Claire?" she thought. "And what do you really want with our Alpha's son?" Outside, under a waning moon, Noah Blackwood threw his head back and unleashed a roar of pure, frustrated fury that shook the trees. The pull he'd felt toward the human woman was undeniable, a maddening itch under his skin. It was the mate bond. He was sure of it, but it was impossible. She was human, and she was in mortal danger because of him. Andrew had scented her, had seen the way Noah reacted to her. She was now a weapon to be used. He had to send her away. To protect her, he had to reject the one thing his wolf howled for. It was the only way. But as he remembered the feel of her pulse under his thumb, the determined set of her jaw as she tended his wound, a more possessive, darker thought rose. Or I could claim her, make her truly mine, and let the world burn for trying to take her. The cliffhanger, the choice was his. Protect her by sending her into an unknown world where Andrew could still find her. Or claim her, igniting a war and binding a human woman to a curse she never chose. He looked at his phone, at the message from his beta, Bradley. "The Ridgecrest wolves are gathering at the border. They're asking for a trade. They want the nanny." Noah's amber eyes blazed in the dark. The game had changed. Andrew hadn't just threatened his son. He had threatened what was his, and an alpha did not trade what was his. He just didn't know yet if Claire was his to protect, or his to claim. The wolf's bane. Cassandra's discovery was a cold blade twisting in the fragile peace of the study. If only I had known then that a few dried flowers could scream betrayal louder than any accusation. Noah's gaze, which had been a turbulent storm of conflict, hardened into glacial ice as he looked from Cassandra's grim face to mine. The profound, terrifying connection I'd felt moments before, the one that had made my very blood hum, snapped under the weight of that look. It was the sound of a door slamming shut in a distant part of the house. Final, ominous. "Explain," Noah said. His voice was not the ragged, emotional growl from before, but the flat, deadly command of an alpha passing judgment. "I found it in the vase on the entryway console," Cassandra stated, placing the small, wilted bundle on Noah's desk. The purple blooms seemed to leach the warmth from the room. "Fresh. It wasn't there this morning during my sweep. I've never seen that before in my life," I said, the words tumbling out too fast. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. The phantom scent of pine and aggression, Andrew's scent, still clung to the back of my throat, a sickening contrast to the flowery poison on the desk. "Wolf's bane," Noah said, not to me but to the room. "A warning, a declaration, and it's inside my walls." His wounded shoulder seemed to stiffen further. "Cassandra, secure the perimeter, triple the patrols. No one enters or leaves without my direct authorization. And post a guard outside the east wing." "Sir," Cassandra gave a sharp nod, her eyes lingering on me with undisguised suspicion before she left, her boots echoing on the hardwood floor. The sound faded, leaving a silence thick enough to choke on. "Noah, you have to believe me," I pleaded, taking a step forward. A low, involuntary rumble vibrated in his chest, a warning so primal it froze me in place. The man who had just spoken of a bond, of impossible desires, was gone. In his place was the wounded wolf, cornered and dangerous. "What I have to do," he said, each word measured, "is determine how a weapon against my kind appeared in my home hours after my brother's attack, after he marked you." He finally looked at me, and the pain in his eyes was worse than the anger. "Did he give this to you?" "No, I told you, I was with Liam the entire time until the screaming started. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't let anyone in." The memory of the vision surged, Andrew's voice, his intrusive touch on my mind. He was in my head, that's all I swear. He studied me, his nostrils flaring slightly as if trying to scent the truth. The bond, or whatever it was, gave a feeble pulse, a dull ache behind my breastbone. He must have felt it too, because his jaw tightened. "Until I can verify that, you are a potential threat to my son and my pack." He said it like he was pronouncing a sentence. "You will return to the East Wing. You will not leave it. A guard will be outside your door and Liam's at all times." "You're confining me." Disbelief washed over me. "I'm not the enemy here." "I don't know what you are," he roared, slamming his good hand on the desk. The wolfsbane jumped. The raw power in the gesture made the air tremble. "You're human, but my brother can project into your mind. You're a stranger, but I feel a mate pull toward you so strong it's tearing my instincts apart. And now a toxin that can paralyze a werewolf is in my foyer. So you will go to your room, Claire, for your safety and for ours." The finality was absolute. The revelation of the bond was now just another piece of evidence in a case against me. Numb, I turned and walked out of the study. The grand hallway felt like a tunnel. The vase on the console, a beautiful crystal thing, now looked like a sinister landmark. Had Andrew somehow placed it there during the chaos? Or had someone else? Thump, creak. The old house settled around me, every sound amplified. A floorboard groaned under my own foot, and I jumped. My skin still prickled with the aftermath of the vision, a psychic sunburn. As I passed a tall window, the dark, moonless forest seemed to press in against the glass, watching. The guard outside the east wing was a broad-shouldered man I didn't recognize. He gave me a curt, impersonal nod and opened the door for me. The soft click of the lock engaging behind me was the loneliest sound I had ever heard. Liam was asleep in his bed, a small lump under the duvet, one fist curled near his cheek. The normalcy of him, the sheer innocence, brought a hot rush of tears to my eyes. I sank into the armchair in my adjacent sitting room, the events of the night crashing down. The screams, the revelation, the fight, the mark, the bond, the wolfsbane. It was a whirlpool and I was sinking. What happened next changed everything. A soft tap at the door connecting to Liam's room. It pushed open, and his small face, pale and serious, peered in. He padded over in his dinosaur pajamas, his eyes too old for his face. "Claire," he whispered. "Hey, sweetheart, you should be asleep." I heard shouting. Was it Uncle Andrew again? The way he said the name, without fear but with a child's certainty of a boogeyman, chilled me. "It's okay now. Your daddy made him go away." The lie felt necessary, but thin. Liam climbed into my lap, a warm, trusting weight. He smelled of baby shampoo and clean cotton. He looked up at me, his head tilted. "You smell different, sad and sparkly." Sparkly. Like Daddy gets sometimes, before the moon. He snuggled closer. "The bad man whispered in my head once, told me to come find him in the woods. I told Daddy. Daddy got really loud." My blood ran cold. Andrew had tried to lure Liam, too. This wasn't just about me. I held him tighter. "You were very brave to tell your daddy." "Are you going to go away?" he asked, his voice small. The question shattered me. "I don't want to, Liam." "Daddy doesn't want you to either, but he's scared. It makes him angry." He stated it as simple fact. Then he touched my temple just where the piercing headache had been. "The bad man left a dirty mark here. Daddy will clean it." Before I could process that, a new sound filtered through the window, not from the woods, but from within the estate walls. Raised voices. Several of them. A deep, arguing rumble that could only be Noah and other, sharper tones. A meeting. A pack meeting. I carried Liam back to his bed, tucking him in. "Try to sleep, little wolf." His eyes were already drifting closed. "You'll stay." "Right next door," I promised. Back in my chair, I strained to listen. The voices were too muffled to make out words, but the cadence was clear. Conflict. One voice rose above the others, calm and reasoned. Bradley, the beta, perhaps. Then Noah's, a dominant boom that silenced the rest. A decision was being made. About me. About the wolfsbane. About the war. The tension peaked every few minutes. A cycle of building pressure and sudden silence. I was the reactive element in their chemical equation, the unknown catalyst. The consequence of their debate would determine if I was family, prisoner, or casualty. Hours bled into each other. The house grew quiet again, the oppressive quiet of held breath. Exhaustion finally pulled me under into a fitful sleep, where dreams of golden eyes and purple flowers chased me through endless dark woods. Crunch, snap. I jerked awake in the gray pre-dawn light. The sound came from outside, not the distant woods, but directly below my window. I crept from the chair and peered past the curtains. There, on the manicured lawn, was Noah. Shirtless despite the chill, his bandaged shoulder stark white against his skin. He was moving through a series of brutal, precise motions, a martial form of some kind. But it wasn't practice. It was agony. Each punch, each kick was fueled by a visible torrent of frustration and pain. He was fighting ghosts, fighting his brother, fighting the bond, fighting the impossible choice. The raw, physical manifestation of his turmoil was more intimate than anything I'd yet witnessed. This was the alpha, alone, unraveling. I watched, my hand pressed to the cold glass. The connection between us, that damned, sparkly thread pulled taut. A sympathetic ache bloomed in my own shoulder. A longing to go to him, to somehow share the burden, warred with the fear of his anger, of the guard outside my door. He stopped suddenly, his head snapping up as if he'd heard a sound. He turned, and his gaze locked directly onto my window. He couldn't possibly see me in the dark room, but he knew. He felt. For a long, suspended moment, we stared across the distance. The early morning birds began to chirp, a cheerful soundtrack to our silent, desperate standoff. Then he turned and strode back toward the house, leaving me with a hammering heart and a new, terrifying question. If the bond worked both ways, what else was I starting to feel? The knock on my sitting room door came just after a servant delivered a breakfast tray. It wasn't the guard. It was Cassandra. Her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Blackwood wants to see you in his study. Now." "Is Liam?" "The guard remains. He will be safe." Her tone left no room for discussion. "Follow me." The walk was a march to a tribunal. In the study, Noah stood by the fireplace, dressed now in dark, clean clothes, every inch the lord of the manor. Bradley, a solid, thoughtful-looking man with watchful eyes, stood near the desk. The wolfsbane was gone. "Claire," Noah began, his voice weary. "The pack has discussed the situation. The wolfsbane was not brought in by any of our people. Its placement suggests an intimate knowledge of the estate's layout, supporting the theory that Andrew, or an agent of his, breached our perimeter during the distraction of the fight." A sliver of hope. "So you believe me?" "I believe the evidence," he corrected, his eyes guarded. "But the mark remains, and his demand stands. He wants you delivered to the border at sundown." The floor dropped away. "You're going to trade me?" Bradley shifted. "It is a clean solution to avoid all-out war, Claire. He gets what he wants. You are removed from danger. The pack is secured." "Removed from danger?" A hysterical laugh bubbled in my throat. "You'd be handing me to him. You saw what he is." Noah flinched. "There is another option." He looked at me, and the conflict was back, blazing in his eyes. "The mate bond. It is undeniable. If I claim it, if I make you mine before the pack, you become Blackwood, protected, untouchable. But it would be a declaration of war more absolute than any other. Andrew would see it as the final theft. He would come for you, for Liam, for all of us with everything he has." He took a step toward me. The air crackled. "The choice is not mine alone. The bond requires consent. Do you feel it?" His question hung in the air, a live wire. I did. It was a terrifying, magnetic pull toward him, a sense of rightness that defied all reason. But it was also a shackle, a ticket into a world of blood and moonlit savagery I never asked for. Cassandra, standing by the door, broke the silence. "Alpha, with respect, she is an unknown, a human marked by our enemy. To claim her now is to invite the wolf into the henhouse. We cannot trust what she is or what he has made her." The accusation was a cold splash of reality. I was a pawn, a weapon, a weakness, never just Claire. Noah held my gaze, waiting. The future balanced on a knife's edge. My lips parted to speak, to give voice to the chaos inside me. But the decision was ripped from us all. A deafening boom shook the very foundations of the house, followed by the shattering of glass and a chorus of furious snarls from outside. The window in the study blew inward in a cascade of glittering shards. Bradley moved in a blur, shoving Noah back. Cassandra was already at the door, a gun in her hand. Alarms began to blare, a screaming, electronic wail. Noah's eyes met mine, wide with a dawning, apocalyptic fury. He didn't wait for sundown. From the direction of the east wing, above the blaring alarms, came the sound I feared most. Liam's terrified scream, abruptly cut off. And then, the distinct, sickening sound of a door being ripped from its hinges. The sound of splintering wood from Liam's room was a physical blow. Claire's world narrowed to that doorway, her body moving before her mind could process the terror. The guard, Cassandra, was already a blur of motion, shoving past her with a snarl that was more animal than human. "Liam!" Claire's scream was raw, scraping her throat. She stumbled after Cassandra into the nursery. The heavy oak door hung from one hinge, shattered inward. The room was a chaos of overturned furniture and shredded plush toys, but it was empty. The window was open, the night air pouring in, carrying the scent of pine and wild musk. "No!" Claire breathed, the word a whimper. Cassandra spun, her eyes flashing amber in the dark. "They took him out the window." She didn't look at Claire. Her head was tilted, ears pricked for sounds beyond the ongoing battle downstairs. The snarls and crashes were a brutal symphony. They came for the air, just as the Alpha feared. Just as the Alpha feared. The words were an accusation. Claire's vision swam, a sharp, familiar pain lancing behind her eyes. This time it wasn't just pain. A flash, an image imposed itself over the ruined room. The dark tree line, a small, limp form draped over a broad shoulder, moving swiftly away. The vision was accompanied by a wave of nausea and a chilling, invasive sense of satisfaction. It wasn't her own feeling. It was Andrew's. "The woods," Claire gasped, clutching her head. "He's taking him to the woods east of the garden wall." Cassandra froze, her predatory focus locking onto Claire. "How could you possibly know that?" There was no time to explain the psychic violation, the mark that now served as a horrific homing beacon. "I just do. We have to go now." A thunderous roar shook the very foundations of the east wing. It was Noah's voice, distorted by fury and beast. "Liam!" The sound of the Alpha's rage seemed to decide something for Cassandra. Her suspicion of Claire warred with the immediate, pack-deep imperative to protect the pup. "If this is a trick, human," she growled, "your death will be slow." She grabbed Claire's arm, her grip iron. "You can point. You stay behind me. You run when I say run." They moved. Cassandra didn't use the main stairs, where the sounds of combat were fiercest. Instead, she pulled Claire down a narrow servant's passage, a hidden artery in the house's stone heart. The sounds were muffled here, but the vibrations of the fight were constant. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. Liam, his small hand in hers, his trusting eyes, the monster carrying him away. They burst out through a side door into the manicured gardens. The scene was one from a nightmare. Under the cold moonlight, shapes moved with impossible speed, clashing, rolling, tearing, fur and flesh and snarling jaws. Claire saw Bradley, his form blurred between man and wolf, holding the line against two larger, gray-furred beasts at the edge of the terrace. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Cassandra didn't pause. She dragged Claire along the shadowed perimeter of a rose garden, heading for the breach in the high eastern wall Claire had seen in her vision. The scent of wolfsbane was stronger here, a cloying, bitter perfume that made Cassandra gag and snarl. "They poisoned the perimeter," Cassandra spat. "Weakened our senses. Clever bastard." They reached the wall. A section of ancient stone had been crudely, powerfully demolished. Beyond it, the wild forest began, a wall of darkness. And there, clear in the soft earth, was a set of large, deep footprints, and beside them, the scuff marks of small, dragging heels. Cassandra inhaled deeply, ignoring the wolfsbane residue. "Blackwood blood," she confirmed, her voice grim. "And Ridgecrest stink." She shoved Claire forward. "Point, now." Claire closed her eyes, trying to quiet the panic. She focused on the invasive, oily sensation left by Andrew's mark. It was a thread in the dark, pulling her attention like a magnet. She pointed northeast, deeper into the dense pines. That way, he's waiting, he's not running. Cassandra's eyes narrowed. A trap. Yes, Claire whispered, for Noah. What happened next changed everything. A massive, charcoal-gray wolf with eyes of burning gold landed silently in front of them, blocking the path. Noah. In his full lupin form, he was a creature of primal power and terrifying beauty, taller at the shoulder than Claire's waist. His muzzle was stained dark, and a deep gash ran across his flank. He looked at Cassandra, then his molten gaze fell on Claire. He shifted. It was not the slow, bone-breaking transformation of legend, but a swift, fluid blurring of form. One moment the wolf stood there. The next, Noah knelt on the ground, naked, bloodied, and breathing hard. The raw, animal power radiating from him was almost as intimidating as the beast. "Report!" he commanded Cassandra, his voice a gravelly rumble. The air was taken through this breach. "The human," Cassandra said, the title dripping with disdain, "claims to know where Andrew has taken him, claims he's waiting. I believe it is a trap for you, Alpha." Noah's eyes never left Claire's face. She saw the storm in them, fear for his son, rage at his brother, and a desperate, bewildered pull towards her. The mate bond. It was a live wire between them, humming in the charged air. "How do you know?" he asked her, his tone dangerously calm. "He left something in my head when he spoke to me before. I can feel where he is. It's like a bad song I can't stop hearing." She met his gaze, pleading. "He's enjoying this, Noah. He wants you to come. He wants you angry." Noah stood, his body a tapestry of old scars and new wounds. He didn't seem to notice his nakedness or the cold. "Then I will give him my anger." He looked at Cassandra. "Return to the house. Secure it. Bradley will hold the line until I return." "Alpha, you cannot go alone. It is exactly what he wants," Cassandra protested. "He has my son." Noah's roar was lupin, echoing through the trees. He mastered himself with a visible effort, his chest heaving. "He has set the terms. I will meet them. Alone." His gaze swung back to Claire. The conflict there was agonizing. You should go with Cassandra. You will be safe in the house." The words hung in the air. Safe. The house was a battleground. Andrew was in her mind. There was no safety. And the thought of Liam, alone and terrified with that monster, ignited a fire in her she didn't know she possessed. She was his nanny, his protector. In that moment, it was the only identity that mattered. "No," Claire said, her voice surprisingly steady. "You can't track him and fight him. Not like this, you're hurt. But I can lead you straight to him. I'm the compass. You're the weapon," Cassandra hissed. "Madness, she leads you into an ambush." Noah stared at Claire, as if seeing her for the first time. The practical, frightened woman was gone, replaced by someone with steel in her spine. The mate bond surged, a warm, undeniable current amidst the cold fear. He gave a single, sharp nod. "You stay behind me. You do exactly as I say. If I tell you to run, you run and do not look back. Do you understand?" "I understand." He shifted again, the beautiful, terrifying wolf reappearing. He nudged her towards the forest with his great head. "Go." Claire stepped through the broken wall into the deep darkness of the Blackwood forest. The wolf followed, a silent, lethal shadow at her side. Cassandra watched them go, her expression unreadable, before melting back towards the sounds of war. The forest was a different world. The moonlight was fractured by the dense canopy, creating pools of silver and pits of utter blackness. Every rustle, every snap of a twig was magnified. Claire focused on the psychic thread, the repulsive pull of Andrew's presence. It grew stronger with every step. Noah moved like a ghost beside her, his paws making no sound on the bed of pine needles. They moved for what felt like an eternity, the tension a coiled spring in Claire's gut. Then the trees thinned. They emerged into a small, rocky clearing dominated by a jagged outcrop. And there, in the center, stood Andrew. He was in human form, dressed in dark, tactical clothing. He looked utterly relaxed, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Liam was clutched against his chest, one large hand clamped over the boy's mouth. Liam's eyes were wide with terror, but they found Claire and Noah, and a tiny, desperate hope flickered in them. "Brother," Andrew called, his voice smooth and carrying. "You're late, and you brought a human pet. How sentimental." Noah shifted, rising to his feet between Claire and Andrew. His nakedness was irrelevant now. He was pure, defiant power. "Let him go, Andrew. This is between us." "But it's not," Andrew crooned, stroking Liam's hair. The boy flinched. "It's about legacy. It's about what was taken from me. You took my future, so I'm taking yours." His eyes slid to Claire. "And it seems I've taken something else you're fond of as well. The connection is quite strong, isn't it, little one? You let him write to me. Good girl." The words were meant to wound, to sow doubt. Claire felt Noah stiffen. "Ignore him," she said, her voice low but clear. "He's lying." "Am I?" Andrew laughed. "She's mine, Noah. I marked her. She's a beacon for me, a little puppet. You feel that bond? That's just my compulsion echoing in her empty human mind. She'll never be a true mate. She's a tool. And you've let a tool lead you to your slaughter." Noah took a step forward, a growl building in his chest. "Last chance. Let him go." Andrew's smile vanished. "Come and get him." He threw Liam. Not to the ground, but sideways, towards the edge of the rocky outcrop where the land fell away into a steep, unseen ravine. Liam's small form sailed through the air, a silent, heartbreaking arc. "Liam!" The scream tore from both Claire and Noah at once. Noah moved with blinding speed, a streak of muscle and fury, launching himself not at Andrew, but after his falling son. It was the moment Andrew had waited for. As Noah dove over the edge, Andrew shifted. His transformation was faster, more violent than Noah's. His clothes ripped, and a massive, silver-gray wolf, larger and leaner than Noah's form, stood in his place. It turned, its pale, intelligent eyes now fixed on Claire, left alone and vulnerable at the tree line. The trap had sprung perfectly. Noah was gone, lured away by the salvation of his child. And Claire was alone with the monster. Andrew's wolf began to stalk towards her, a low, hungry rumble emanating from its chest. The psychic mark in her mind flared, a searing brand of ownership and predatory intent. It whispered, "Mine." Claire stumbled back, her back hitting the rough bark of a pine. There was nowhere to run. The sounds of the distant battle were gone. There was only the clearing, the chasm where Noah and Liam had disappeared, and the advancing beast. If only I had known what he truly wanted. It wasn't just war. It wasn't just territory. The wolf paused a few feet away, its hot, meat-scented breath washing over her. It seemed to savor the moment. Then it did something she didn't expect. It shifted back. Andrew stood before her, human again, his expression one of twisted fascination. "So brave," he murmured, closing the distance. "Or so stupid. He left you to save the pup. The alpha's priority. You see your place now." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her clammy cheek. The touch made her skin crawl, and the mark in her mind screamed. "The bond you feel with him is a pale, pathetic thing," Andrew whispered, his face inches from hers. "A shadow of what I can make you feel. What I will make you feel. You will be the instrument of his destruction, my little human weapon." He leaned closer, his lips nearly touching her ear. His final words were a soft, chilling promise that turned her blood to ice. "The bite won't just make you a wolf, Claire. It will make you mine. And then you will go back to his house, to his son, and you will tear out his throat for me." The world narrowed to the gleam of Andrew's elongated canines, the predatory grace of his advance. He was a wall of muscle and malice, and Claire was trapped against the unforgiving stone of the ravine's edge. The sounds of Noah's desperate struggle with Liam's weight somewhere below were swallowed by the roaring in her ears. "He's going to bite me." "Such a waste of a pretty face, worrying like that," Andrew purred, his voice a velvet trap. "This won't hurt, much, and then you'll belong to me." He lunged. Claire didn't think. She dropped, a clumsy human collapse that saved her throat. His jaws snapped shut on empty air where her shoulder had been. The movement sent a skitter of pebbles over the edge. She scrambled sideways on hands and knees, the rough stone tearing her palms. A roar, guttural and furious, erupted from the ravine. Noah. Andrew's head whipped toward the sound, a fraction of a second of distraction. It was all Claire had. She surged to her feet and ran, not back toward the trees where he'd expect, but along the rim of the ravine toward the sounds of struggle. "Running just makes it more fun," Andrew called after her, his footsteps a casual, terrifying stalk. What happened next changed everything. A snarl, wet and pained, echoed up from the shadows. Then a small, terrified voice. "Daddy!" Liam. Claire skidded to a halt, peering over the edge. 10 feet down, Noah had managed to lodge himself and Liam on a narrow, jagged outcrop. Noah's left arm was wrapped around a twisted root, his right cradling Liam tightly to his chest. His face was a mask of agony, his wounded side a dark, wet stain against his shirt. The drop below them was sheer and deep. He couldn't climb, not with Liam, not with that wound. "Claire!" Noah's voice was strained, his eyes locking onto hers. They held no suspicion now, only a desperate primal command. "Get him!" Andrew's chuckle came from right behind her. "Touching, the loyal little human, but you're mine to claim." She could feel his heat at her back. One more step and he'd have her. Her mind, usually so orderly, fractured into 1,000 screaming pieces. Then a clear, cold shard of memory pierced through. The vision. The mark. Andrew's smug voice in her head. "You are my eyes, little bird." If only she had known the true cost of that connection. She didn't turn. Instead, she focused on the mark, on that invasive thread in her mind, and she pushed. Not to see, but to send. She poured every ounce of her fear, her revulsion, the image of Noah and Liam clinging to life on that rock, down that psychic line. A raw, unfiltered blast of human terror. Andrew hissed, a sound of surprise and pain. "What are you?" Claire spun, not away from him, but toward the ravine edge directly above Noah. "Liam, look at me, sweetheart." The little boy, trembling, peeked over Noah's shoulder, his eyes wide and wolf-bright. "I'm going to catch you, okay? Your daddy's going to lift you up to me." Noah understood instantly. A grim determination hardened his features. He adjusted his grip, ignoring the white-hot protest from his injuries. "No," Andrew snarled, shaking off the psychic feedback. He reached for Claire. She dropped to her stomach, extending her arms over the void. "Now, Noah!" With a grunt of immense effort, Noah lifted Liam upward, using the last of his leverage. The boy was light, but the motion was precarious, a ballet on a knife's edge. Liam stretched his small hands toward Claire's. Andrew's hand closed around the back of Claire's sweater. He yanked. Her torso scraped backward over the stone, but her fingers caught Liam's wrists. She held on, a scream tearing from her throat as Andrew's pull threatened to dislocate her shoulders. Liam dangled, a precious weight between the abyss and salvation. "Let the pup go, Claire," Andrew growled in her ear, his breath hot. "He's not your concern, you will be." "He's everything," she screamed back, the words ripped from a place she didn't know she had. She kicked backward blindly, connecting with something solid. Andrew grunted, his grip loosening for a critical second. She hauled with every fiber of her being, scrambling backward with her heels. Liam came up over the lip of the ravine, tumbling onto her, a bundle of sobbing whimpers. She rolled, clutching him to her, putting her body between him and Andrew. But Andrew wasn't looking at the boy. His gaze was fixed on the ravine. A low, dangerous smile spread across his face. Claire followed his look. Noah had tried to climb after lifting Liam. The root he held groaned, splintered, and gave way. For a heart-stopping moment, he hung by one hand on the raw stone edge, his feet seeking purchase that wasn't there. His eyes met Claire's. They held a universe of regret, of unspoken words, of a bond severed before it could truly form. Then his fingers slipped. He fell silently, disappearing into the shadows of the ravine. The only sound was the distant, final crash of impact. A wail built in Claire's throat, but it was Liam who gave it voice. A sharp, piercing cry of pure loss that echoed through the clearing. "Daddy." Andrew threw his head back and laughed, the sound triumphant and unhinged. And so falls the great Noah Blackwood. A fitting end, don't you think? Brought low by his own sentimentality. For a human. He turned his victorious gaze on Claire and the weeping child in her arms. Now, where were we? The world went gray at the edges. Noah was gone. The anchor, the confusing, magnetic force that had pulled at her since she arrived, was severed. All that remained was the monster before her and the child she had to protect. "Cassandra and the others will be here," Claire said, her voice surprisingly steady. She rocked Liam, who had buried his face in her neck, his small body shaking. "They're chasing phantoms in the West Woods, thanks to my diversion," Andrew said, stepping closer. He was savoring this. "We have time, all the time I need to finish my masterpiece." He gestured to her. "You, the human who saved the air. You'll return to the estate, a grieving heroine. They'll welcome you, comfort you. And then, under the next full moon, when the wolf I put inside you wakes, you'll tear out the throat of the Blackwood beta and any other who stands to protect the boy. The pack will be shattered, and I will walk in and claim what is mine." The plan was so much more horrifying spelled out. She wasn't just to be a weapon, she was to be a Trojan horse, a violation of sanctuary. "I won't let you," she whispered. "You won't have a choice," he replied, his voice dropping to a hypnotic murmur. The compulsion in it was a physical pressure, a fog trying to cloud her will. "The bite brings the change. The change brings obedience to the one who made you. My blood, my will be in your veins. You will want to please me." He was upon them. Claire tried to shield Liam, to curl around him, but Andrew's hand, impossibly strong, gripped her hair and pulled her head back, exposing the curve of her neck. Liam screamed. The cold touch of his muzzle against her skin made her stomach heave. She braced for the piercing pain, for the end of her humanity. A sound stopped him. Not a roar, a low, rhythmic, wet dragging, and a ragged, inhaling breath. From the rim of the ravine, a bloodied hand slapped onto the stone. Andrew froze, his head snapping around. Inch by terrible inch, Noah Blackwood hauled himself over the edge. He was a ruin. His clothes were shredded, one arm hung at a wrong angle, and his face was a mask of blood and dirt. But his eyes burned with a feral, golden light. He wasn't just a man. He was the Alpha, risen from the grave. "You," Noah rasped, the word a promise of violence, "don't touch what is mine." Andrew released Claire, shoving her aside as he faced his brother. "Impossible. That fall should have killed you." "You underestimated the bond," Noah choked out, pushing himself to his knees. The air around him shimmered like heat off asphalt. A cracking, grinding sound emanated from his broken body, bones realigning, wounds knitting at a visible, impossible rate. The change was upon him, not by the moon's call, but by sheer force of will. "Daddy," Liam cried, trying to squirm from Claire's grasp. "Stay with Claire, son," Noah commanded, his voice gaining strength, layering with a growl. His gaze flicked to her. "Get him to the tree line." "Now," Andrew laughed, but it was tinged with unease. "You can barely stand. You think you can fight me, in this state." "I don't have to fight," Noah said, finally rising to his feet. His posture was transforming, becoming predatory, hunched. "I just have to keep you from them." He launched himself, not with his former grace, but with the terrifying, unstoppable momentum of a wrecking ball. He crashed into Andrew, and the two alphas became a whirlwind of snarls, snapping jaws and tearing claws. "Run, Claire!" Noah's voice was half human, half beast, strained through the struggle. Claire didn't need telling twice. She scooped Liam up, ignoring the protest in her muscles, and ran for the dense forest, away from the clearing. The sounds of the fight behind her were savage, a symphony of bestial fury. She didn't look back. The woods were a blur. Thorns snatched at her clothes, branches slapped her face. Liam clung to her, silent now, his tears wet against her skin. She ran until her lungs were fire and her legs were lead, guided only by the desperate need to put distance between them and the clearing. Finally, she stumbled into a small, quiet hollow and collapsed against a thick pine, sliding to the ground with Liam in her lap. She listened, her breath so loud in her own ears she feared it would give them away. The distant sounds of fighting had stopped. An absolute, oppressive silence descended. Who had won? The question hung in the cold air, more terrifying than the snarls. If it was Andrew, he would come for her. He would track her. The mark would lead him right to her. If it was Noah, what state would he be in? The wolf had been rising, the man fading. Would the alpha who emerged from that fight even recognize them? A twig snapped, far too close. Claire held her breath, pressing Liam closer. She peered through the lattice of pine needles. A figure moved between the trees. Slow, deliberate. It was too tall for Andrew, its silhouette broader. Noah. But as he stepped into a shaft of weak moonlight, Claire's hope curdled into a new kind of dread. He stood naked, his body a roadmap of horrific, half-healed wounds and fresh, bleeding gashes. The physical damage was secondary. It was his eyes. They glowed with a feral, untamed gold, fixed on her with an intensity that held no recognition, only a deep, primal hunger. His head tilted, animal-like, scenting the air. He took a step toward their hiding place, then another. He had told her to run. He had saved them. But the man who had done that was gone, submerged beneath the beast his injuries and rage had unleashed. The alpha had survived. The protector had returned. But as he closed the distance, his claws extending, a low, possessive rumble building in his chest, Claire realized the terrible truth. The greatest threat to her and Liam might no longer be Andrew. It might be the very wolf who had sworn to keep them safe. The wolf that had been Noah stared at them, and in its eyes there was no one home. Claire's breath hitched, a tiny, trapped sound in the silent hollow. Liam, clutched against her chest, went preternaturally still. The creature's muzzle was dark with blood, Andrew's blood, she hoped, prayed, and its sides heaved with ragged, powerful breaths that steamed in the cold air. The intelligence that usually burned in Noah's gaze, that fierce, protective light, was gone. Replaced by a flat, predatory gold that scanned them not as family, but as prey. This is what he became to save us, she thought, a wave of nauseating guilt crashing over her. And now he's going to finish us. A low, continuous growl vibrated from the beast's throat, the sound of rocks grinding deep in the earth. It took one slow, deliberate step forward, its massive paws sinking into the loam. The scent of wet fur, iron, and wildness flooded the small space. "Daddy," Liam whispered, the word a fragile thread of hope. The wolf's ears twitched. Its head cocked, but the feral glare didn't soften. It was a reaction to sound, not recognition. "No, sweetheart," Claire murmured, her lips barely moving. Not right now. Be very, very quiet. She had to think. The forest around them was a tomb. The earlier sounds of battle utterly ceased. Andrew was either dead or gone. They were alone with this thing. Her mind, usually so practical, scrabbled for purchase. The gun was lost in the ravine. Running was impossible. He'd catch them in 3 strides. Hiding was a joke. The bond, the insane, impossible mate bond Noah had spoken of, he'd said it was a tether. Could she pull on it? Or was it as shredded as his humanity? The wolf took another step. Claire's back pressed into the cold, damp earth of the hollow. She did the only thing she could. She slowly, so slowly, shifted Liam, putting her own body more squarely between him and the advancing beast. "Noah," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "It's Claire, it's Liam, you saved us. The fight is over." The wolf snarled, lips peeling back from teeth that looked like ivory daggers. The sound was a clear warning, stop your noise. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through her. This was it. After everything, to be torn apart by the man who had just died for them. The cruel irony was a bitter taste in her mouth. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, holding Liam tighter. A new sensation prickled at the edge of her awareness. Not fear, not the invasive, oily tendril of Andrew's mark. This was different. A raw, bleeding ache of confusion, and a deep, resonant thread of green, of forest and pack and home. It was faint, buried under layers of animal rage and pain, but it was there. It was coming from the wolf. Her eyes flew open. The beast had paused, its head lowered, nostrils flaring as it scented the air directly around her. It wasn't just smelling her fear, it was smelling her. And the bond, use it. The thought was desperate. She didn't know how to be a werewolf's mate. She didn't even fully believe it was real. But that thread of connection was the only tool she had. Claire forced her muscles to unlock. She stopped trying to make herself a wall and instead, keeping her movements fluid and non-threatening, she brought her hand up to her own throat, to the place where Andrew's teeth had grazed. The skin was tender, bruised. A small, bloody scratch stood out against her pallor. She let her fingers brush the wound, then held them out, trembling, toward the wolf. "He hurt me," she whispered, pouring every ounce of her shattered emotion into the words. "Your brother. He tried to take what's yours." The reaction was instantaneous. The wolf's growl cut off. A tremor ran through its powerful frame. The gold eyes blinked, and for a fraction of a second, something else flickered in their depths. A storm of possessive fury that was profoundly, uniquely Noah. It was gone as quickly as it came, but the beast didn't advance. It stared at her offered hand, at the scent of her blood mixed with Andrew's. Then it whined. The sound was so utterly pained, so lost, that tears sprang to Claire's eyes. The massive creature shook its head as if plagued by flies, backing up a single step. It was fighting. Whatever will had dragged Noah's broken body from the ravine, and forced this change was now at war with the primal wolf it had unleashed. "That's it," Claire breathed, hope a dangerous flame in her chest. "Come back to us. Liam needs you. I need you." The wolf's whine turned into a choked snarl. It twisted away from her, crashing into a nearby sapling and snapping it in two. The conflict within him was a physical torment. Claire could feel it echoing down that faint bond, a searing agony of dislocation, of two souls shredded and tangled in one flesh. What happened next changed everything. As the wolf thrashed, a new sound pierced the forest's quiet. Not a growl, a howl. It came from the direction of the estate, clear and questioning, rising and falling in a specific pattern. A call, Cassandra. The wolf's head snapped up. Its ears pivoted. The howl came again, closer this time, joined by another, deeper voice, Bradley. The pack was searching. The sound of their calls, the signature of their scent on the wind, acted like an anchor. The feral chaos in the gold eyes receded another inch, replaced by a dawning, animalistic awareness of place and hierarchy. The beast looked from Claire and Liam to the direction of the howls, then back again. The possessive fury resurged, but it was now directed outward. A threat was approaching his things, his wounded mate and his pup. With a final, shuddering exhale, the wolf turned and melted into the undergrowth, a shadow among shadows, moving not toward the estate but parallel to it, a silent, unseen escort. The relief was so violent it left Claire weak. She sagged against the earth, lungs burning. Liam was crying softly into her shirt. "He's gone, baby, he's gone," she soothed, though she knew it wasn't true. He was out there, watching, guarding, or waiting. Minutes later, the search party found them. Cassandra emerged first, a sleek gray wolf that shifted in a blur of motion and cracking bone, immediately wrapping an emergency foil blanket around Claire's shoulders. Her sharp eyes took in Claire's torn clothes, the mark on her neck, Liam's tear-streaked face. "Andrew?" Cassandra asked, her voice ablade. "Gone or dead, Noah fought him," Claire rasped. "Noah, he fell. He came back, but he's not himself. He's a wolf. He's out there." Cassandra's jaw tightened. She gave a sharp whistle. Bradley, in human form with others, arrived. "The Alpha is in a feral shift. Perimeter guard only. Do not engage. He's protecting the nanny and the heir. Let him be." Bradley nodded, his face grim, and began issuing quiet orders. Claire was lifted onto a stretcher, Liam held securely in her arms. As they were carried back through the moon-dappled woods, she could feel a presence keeping pace in the darkness just beyond the ring of flashlight beams. A pair of gold eyes, reflecting the light for a moment before vanishing. The east wing had become a fortress. Claire sat in a chair by Liam's bed, freshly showered, wearing borrowed sweatpants and a sweater, a pack medic having cleaned and bandaged the scratch on her neck. The physical wounds were minor. The others went far deeper. Liam, exhausted from terror and adrenaline, had finally fallen into a fitful sleep. Claire watched the rise and fall of his small chest, her hand resting on the blanket beside him. The door opened softly. Cassandra entered, now in tactical gear, a tablet in her hand. "The perimeter is secure. We've found signs of a struggle and a lot of blood at the ravine, but no body for Andrew. He's in the wind. Our people are tracking." She paused, studying Claire. "You used the link. To find Liam." It wasn't a question. Claire nodded, too tired to lie. "It was like a pull, a bad feeling. I just knew. And you led Noah right into a trap." Claire flinched. "I led him to his son." "A son who was bait," Cassandra countered, but some of the heat had left her voice. She pulled up a chair. "The Alpha's transformation was unstable. He was too wounded, too enraged. He forced the change through sheer will and—" She trailed off, her eyes flicking to Claire's neck. "And the bond. It's the only thing that could have done it, but it broke him. His human mind is submerged. The wolf is in control." "Will he come back?" Claire's voice was small. "If the bond is strong enough, it might pull him back, or it might just tether a monster to you forever." Cassandra leaned forward. "You need to understand what you are now. To him, to the pack. Andrew marked you as a weapon. Noah has claimed you as a mate. In their world, you are no longer Claire the nanny. You are a prize, a key, a weakness." The words were a cold shower. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the temporary solution is over. Bradley's diplomatic trade is off the table. You're marked by our Alpha now, however feral he is. Giving you to Andrew would be an unforgivable insult. It means war is inevitable." Cassandra's gaze was relentless. "Your presence here is a beacon for Andrew and a destabilizing force for our Alpha. You have two choices, as I see it. You can leave. We can wipe your memory, set you up somewhere far away. The bond might stretch, it might ache, but with distance and time, and with Noah like he is, it could fade. You could be free. Claire looked at Liam's sleeping face. Or you stay, you lean into the bond, you try to pull Noah Blackwood out of the beast he's become, and in doing so, you cement your place at the heart of this pack, at the heart of this war. Cassandra stood. Think about it, you have until dawn. She left Claire alone with the sound of Liam's breathing and the oppressive silence of the fortified wing. But it wasn't truly silent. Through the double-paned glass, faint and far away, came the sound of a lone wolf howling at the moon. The song was not one of triumph, but of profound, fragmented anguish. It was a sound that spoke of a king lost in his own kingdom, a soul howling from the depths of a prison of its own making. It was the sound of her choice. If only I had known that choice would be made for me. She must have dozed off in the chair, because the next thing she knew, a small, warm hand was patting her cheek. Claire, I'm thirsty. She jerked awake, her body protesting. Liam stood beside her, his eyes clear but serious. She got him a glass of water from the bathroom, and he drank it solemnly. Daddy's sad, he said, putting the glass down. I know, sweetie. The wolf is loud, it's hurting him. Liam climbed into her lap, a rare gesture for the usually independent child. He laid his head on her shoulder. You can make it quiet. You smell like pack now, like home. The innocent certainty in his words shook her. He was a child of this world. He sensed things she could barely comprehend. A soft tap at the glass door to the balcony made them both jump. Claire's heart hammered. She turned, slowly. There, on the other side of the reinforced glass, stood Noah. He was human. Naked, shivering, covered in dried blood, mud, and a latticework of horrific, half-healed scars from the ravine fall. He leaned heavily against the glass, his eyes no longer feral gold, but their familiar storm-gray hue, clouded with pain and exhaustion, but his. He looked at her, then at Liam in her arms, and a devastation so profound crossed his face that Claire felt it in her own chest. He mouthed a single, silent word. Claire! Then his knees buckled. He slid down the glass, leaving a smeared trail, and collapsed unconscious on the balcony. Chaos erupted. Alarms were silenced as Cassandra and Bradley, who had been monitoring the exterior cameras, burst into the room from the hall. Claire, with Liam clinging to her, could only stare as they brought Noah's broken, freezing body inside. The medics swarmed. But as they lifted him onto a stretcher, his hand, cold and streaked with dirt, fell limp. And curled in his palm, crushed from being held with desperate, animal tightness, was a single, perfect white wildflower, the kind that grew in the hollow where she had hidden with his son. Bradley met Claire's eyes over the frantic activity, his own wide with a shock that mirrored hers. The bond, he murmured. It brought him home. But as they rushed Noah away to the medical suite, Claire stayed rooted, Liam in her arms. The flower was a message, a thread of humanity he had clung to. The wolf had receded, but for how long? And what had it cost him to find his way back? The answer came faster than anyone expected. She was in the kitchenette, making Liam a simple meal hours later when a wave of dizziness hit her. A phantom pain, sharp and hot, bloomed in her side. Noah's side, she realized. Through the bond, she felt a surge of confusion, then panic that was not her own. A scream echoed through the estate, raw and full of terror. It was followed by the sound of shattering glass and a deep, thunderous roar that was neither fully human nor fully wolf. Cassandra's voice barked over the intercom, tight with alarm. Code Black, the Alpha is shifting again. He's contained in medbay, but he's volatile. Claire, stay in the east wing. Lock the door. But it was too late for locks. Because as the roar faded into a series of panicked, pained snarls, Claire felt it, a pull insistent and magnetic, tugging at her very core. It was Noah, not calling her, needing her. The bond was a wire pulled taut, and his agony was vibrating down its length. Liam looked up from his toys, his eyes wide. "Daddy's calling you." The choice was gone. The bond had decided. Claire looked at the locked door to the hall, then towards the direction of the unearthly sounds. The pull was physical, a hook in her sternum. To stay was safe. To go was madness. She took a step toward the door, and then another. If only I had known what was waiting for me in that medical room, I would have never turned the handle. The pull was a physical thing, a hook in her sternum reeling her in. Claire's bare feet were moving before her mind could protest. The frantic, panicked energy flooding the mate bond from the medical suite, overriding every shred of self-preservation. "He's drowning," her soul screamed. "And you're the only heir." The estate was a tomb of polished wood and cold stone, but the bond was a blazing trail. She followed it, past the grand staircase, down a service corridor she'd never seen. The sounds reached her first, a cacophony of snarling terror, the crash of metal, and Cassandra's voice, sharp with command. "Stand back! Do not engage! Contain the space!" Claire burst through the double doors into chaos. The medical suite was a wreck. A stainless steel trolley was on its side, instruments scattered. Bradley and two other large men in security gear had formed a tense half-circle, their bodies rigid. In the center of the room, caught in a shaft of sterile light, was Noah. Or what was left of him. He was caught mid-shift, a horrific sculpture of agony. One arm was human, braced against the floor, tendons standing out like cables. The other was a twisted, furred limb ending in claws that scored deep grooves into the tile. His face was a nightmare mask. One eye a wild, golden lupin glow, the other his own stormy gray, wide with a terror that mirrored her own. A guttural, pained whine tore from a throat that was neither man nor beast. "Claire, get out!" Cassandra barked, not taking her eyes off the alpha. But Claire was already stepping forward, the bond yanking her into the line of fire. She felt his panic as her own, the sensation of bones cracking and reforming, of a mind shredded between two states, of a wolf howling in a cage of flesh. It was a feedback loop of pure torment. "Noah," she said, her voice a thread of sound in the tense room. The mismatched eyes snapped to her. The human one pleaded. The wolf one burned. "I'm here," she thought, pushing the feeling down the bond as hard as she could, not with words, but with an anchor of calm, of stillness. "I'm right here." She took another step. Bradley moved to intercept, but Cassandra held up a hand, her gaze locked on the unfolding scene. A gamble. A deadly one. Claire ignored them all. The world narrowed to the tortured creature before her. She sank to her knees, just out of reach of those raking claws. The scent of him was overwhelming, wild musk, fear, and the coppery tang of blood. "Look at me," she whispered. "Just look at me." The wolf eye dimmed just a fraction. The human one focused, tears mixing with sweat on his cheek. A clawed hand twitched toward her, then curled inward as if ashamed. Safe, she pushed through the bond, layering the thought with the memory of the hollow, of Liam's small hand in hers, of the quiet before the storm. "You're safe, we're safe." A shudder racked his body. The fur on his arm began to recede, the bones audibly grinding as they slid back into a human shape. The process was slower, less violent. The golden light in his eye flickered and died, leaving both eyes his own, dazed and exhausted. He collapsed forward onto his hands and knees, fully human, naked and trembling, his breath coming in ragged sobs. For a moment there was only the sound of his breathing. Then Cassandra moved, snapping orders. "Bradley, get a blanket and a sedative. You too, clear this debris. Now." Claire didn't wait for permission. She shuffled forward on her knees and reached out, her hand hovering over his sweat-damp back before settling lightly between his shoulder blades. He flinched at the contact, then leaned into it, a low, broken sound escaping him. "You came back," he rasped, the words raw. "You called," she said simply. What happened next changed everything. It wasn't a choice. It was a declaration written in blood and bond. Noah turned his head, his gaze locking with hers. In the depths of his gray eyes, something settled, something final and absolute. A decision that transcended thought. Before Claire could process it, before Cassandra could react, he moved. With a speed that belied his exhaustion, he seized her wrist. His grip wasn't cruel, but it was unbreakable. In one fluid, primal motion, he pulled her hand to his mouth and bit down on the fleshy pad of her palm. "Noah!" Cassandra's shout was one of pure shock. White-hot pain lanced through Claire. She cried out, trying to pull back, but he held fast. It wasn't the savage tear of Andrew's intended attack. It was precise, deliberate. His canine teeth broke her skin, and she felt the warm rush of her own blood. He held the bite for 3 heartbeats, his eyes never leaving hers, pouring a torrent of emotion down the bond. Possession, protection, a desperate, anchoring claim. Then he released her, swaying. Bradley rushed forward, catching him as he slumped, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. Claire fell back onto her heels, clutching her bleeding hand to her chest, the wound throbbing in time with her frantic heartbeat. Cassandra was at her side in an instant, grabbing Claire's arm to inspect the damage. The bite was clean, deep, and unmistakable. The head of security's face went pale, then grim. She looked from the wound to Noah's unconscious form, then back to Claire, her expression one of dawning, awful understanding. "He's claimed you," Cassandra said, her voice hollow. "Formally, irrevocably, in front of witnesses." Claire stared at the twin punctures, the blood welling up. "What does that mean?" "It means the debate is over." Cassandra's grip tightened. "You are no longer a human nanny, Claire. You are the Alpha's claimed mate. By our laws, by his will, and now by his mark. Andrew will see this as the ultimate provocation. There will be war." The words should have filled her with terror. But a strange calm was seeping through the pain, spreading from the bite mark up her arm. It felt like a lock clicking shut, a circuit completing. The chaotic, magnetic pull of the bond didn't vanish, but it stabilized. It had a shape now, a defined channel. Noah's presence in her mind was no longer a stormy sea, but a deep, steady river. "Get her cleaned up," Cassandra ordered a medic who had hovered nearby. "Then bring her to the Alpha's quarters. He'll be moved there. They cannot be separated now. The bond is too fresh, too volatile." As Claire was led away, her hand bandaged, she looked back. Bradley and another man were lifting Noah's unconscious form onto a stretcher. The flower from the hollow, now crushed and wilted, fell from his limp hand to the blood-spattered floor. The Alpha's quarters were not a bedroom. They were a fortress within a fortress. A large sitting room with a massive stone fireplace led to a Spartan bedroom and an adjoining study. The windows here were thicker, the locks heavier. It smelled of old leather, pine, and him. Noah was laid in the large bed, deeply under sedation. Claire sat in a chair by the fire, a blanket around her shoulders, staring at the bandage on her hand. The throbbing had subsided to a warm, persistent ache, a constant reminder of his teeth, his claim. Cassandra entered, closing the door softly. She carried a tray with 2 mugs of tea, her usual armor-piercing demeanor softened by exhaustion. "He won't wake for hours," she said, handing Claire a mug. "The sedative is strong. His body needs to heal from the trauma of the unstable shifts." Claire took the tea. "Will he shift again, like that?" "I don't know," Cassandra admitted, sinking into the opposite chair. The admission seemed to cost her. No Alpha has ever survived a fall like that, forced a shift in that state, and lived. His biology is rewriting itself in real time. The bond is the only thing tethering him to sanity. She nodded at Claire's hand. And now you are literally tethered to him. Why did he do it? Claire asked, her voice small. Bite me. Cassandra sipped her tea, her gaze distant. Instinct, survival. When an alpha is critically unstable, the bond with a true mate can anchor them. But it's a two-way street. It needs to be solidified, made tangible. The claiming bite, it roots the bond in the physical world. It tells his wolf, and every other wolf who senses you, that you are his. A part of his territory, a part of his pack. It's permanent, Claire. And it starts a war. It makes a war inevitable, Cassandra corrected. Andrew was looking for an excuse. This is a banner. He tried to claim you first in his way with that psychic mark. Noah has just publicly, physically counterclaimed. In wolf terms, it's the highest insult. It's a challenge to the death. The weight of it pressed down on Claire. She was a key, a catalyst, and now a prize. What do I do? For now, Cassandra sighed. You stay here, you anchor him. When he wakes, you help him find his balance. The bond is a tool. You used it to calm his wolf. Now you must learn to use it to help him bridge the gap between his two natures. If he can't regain control. A feral alpha is a catastrophe for every pack on this continent. The environmental sound of the crackling fire filled the silence. The logs popped and hissed. And Liam, Claire asked. Safe, under heavy guard in the nursery suite. He's asking for you. Cassandra's eyes met hers. He knows something's wrong with his father. He believes you can fix it. That belief, it matters. To the pack, a mate who can steady the alpha and protect the heir is, she trailed off, searching for the word. Legitimate. The word hung in the air. Claire was being assessed, not as a threat or a pawn, but as a potential pillar of the very world she'd been thrust into. The thought was terrifying. Cassandra stood to leave. Get some rest. The real work begins when he wakes. Alone with the sleeping alpha, Claire finally let the tears fall. They were silent, born of confusion, fear, and the sheer, overwhelming strangeness of it all. She traced the bandage on her palm. Claimed. The word echoed. She was owned in a way. But as she looked at Noah's face, peaceful in sleep, the harsh lines of pain smoothed away, she also felt a terrifying, burgeoning sense of rightness. The bond hummed between them, a quiet, steady pulse. Mine, it whispered back. She must have dozed in the chair, because the next thing she knew, a low groan pulled her from a shallow sleep. The fire had burned low. Noah was stirring. Claire was at the bedside in an instant. His eyes fluttered open, gray and clouded with drug-induced fog. They landed on her, and confusion reigned for a moment before a wave of clarity and horror washed over him. Claire, he croaked. His gaze dropped to the bandage on her hand, visible where she gripped the bedsheet. His face crumpled. Gods, I bit you. I claimed you. You did, she said, keeping her voice neutral. He tried to sit up, weakness forcing him back down. I had no right. I was lost. The wolf, the pain, it was the only anchor it could find. You're anchored now, she said. She didn't know what else to say. He turned his head away, staring at the stone wall. I've doomed you, and I've doomed my pack to a war we may not win. A spark of anger, hot and sudden, flared in Claire's chest. It traveled the bond, and Noah's head snapped back toward her, startled. Stop it, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. You didn't doom me. Andrew did when he marked me. You didn't start this war. He did when he stole Liam. You saved your son, you survived. And now you have to lead. She leaned closer. You told me once I had a choice, stay or go. That choice was made for me on that forest floor. I'm here, I'm claimed. So stop regretting the only thing that might be keeping you alive. And tell me what I need to do to help you live. Noah stared at her, shock giving way to a slow, weary respect. The bond between them vibrated with her conviction. He slowly, painfully, lifted his unbandaged hand. After a hesitation, she took it. The contact sent a jolt of that stabilizing calm through both of them. "The shift," he said, his voice a rough whisper. "It's like a door in my mind is broken. I can't control the change. The wolf is too close to the surface and it's angry, scared. The fall, the forced transformation, it damaged something. How do we fix the door?" He closed his eyes, concentrating. "The bond, it's a framework. When you calmed me, you gave the wolf a focus that wasn't fear or rage. It was you. I need you to be that focus. Constantly. When you feel the panic through the bond, when you feel the wolf rising, you have to push back. Not with fear, with that quiet, that certainty you just showed me. You want me to be your emotional regulator," she said, the absurdity of it almost making her laugh. "I want you to be my mate," he said, the word heavy with new meaning. "In every sense that matters now, it's not a fair ask. It's a monumental one." Before she could answer, a soft knock came at the door. At Noah's weak enter, Bradley stepped in, his expression grave. "Alpha, Claire," he nodded. "We have a problem. The perimeter scouts report Ridgecrest wolves are gathering at the eastern border. Not attacking, just massing. Andrew is making a show of force." Noah's hand tightened around Claire's. The panic she'd felt earlier in the medbay flickered, a tiny spark at the edge of the bond. Claire instinctively clamped down on it, pouring a wave of focused calm back toward him. "Not now. We're safe here. Think." Noah took a shuddering breath, the spark extinguished. "Strength. 24, maybe more. He's called in allies or hired mercenaries," Bradley said, his jaw tight. "Cassandra is mobilizing our fighters, but our numbers are fewer. And with you, indisposed." He didn't finish the sentence. The unspoken words hung in the air. An unstable alpha is a weak alpha. War is coming, and we are vulnerable. Noah looked from Bradley to Claire, his eyes haunted. The weight of his pack, his son, and now this woman he'd bound to him, settled on his shoulders. Claire saw the moment the alpha in him, battered but not broken, pushed through the fatigue and fear. "Hold the line," Noah ordered, his voice gaining a shred of its old authority. "No provocations, but if a single Ridgecrest claw crosses that border, you have my authority to repel them with lethal force. Buy us time." "Time for what, Alpha?" Bradley asked quietly. Noah's gaze locked with Claire's. The bond thrummed with a desperate, determined energy. "Time for me to learn how to walk again," Noah said, his words a low vow. "In both skins." Bradley nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes, and left. The silence that followed was charged. The distant, environmental sound of a wolf howling. One of their own sentries, drifted through the thick glass, a chilling reminder of the enemy at the gate. Noah shifted, wincing, trying to sit up higher. "Claire, I need you to do something for me, something dangerous." Her heart stuttered. "What?" "The bond is stabilizing me, but it's passive. I need to test the door, to try and shift willingly with you holding the line." His eyes were deadly serious. "If I start to lose myself, you have to pull me back. If you can't, Cassandra has orders to sedate me, no matter the cost." The proposal was madness. He was barely conscious. But the alternative, a vulnerable pack, a gathering enemy, was worse. "Now," she whispered. "Now," he said, "while I still have the courage to ask." He released her hand and with immense effort pushed back the blankets. He was still pale, covered in fading bruises and healing scars. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet touching the cold floor. He looked up at her, a man facing his own personal abyss. "Don't be afraid," he said, though the command was for himself as much as for her. "Feed the bond with strength, your strength." Claire knelt on the floor before him, placing her hands on his knees. She looked up into his eyes, pouring every ounce of the stubborn, practical will that had kept her alive this far into the connection between them. She thought of Liam's laugh, of the quiet before dawn, of standing her ground. "I'm ready," she lied. Noah placed his hands over hers. He took a deep, shuddering breath and closed his eyes. The change began not with a snarl, but with a tremor. She felt it through his skin and through the bond, a gathering storm in his cells. His muscles tensed. A low groan escaped his lips. The air around them grew charged, thick with the scent of ozone and wild earth. "I'm here," Claire thought, screaming it down the bond, a lighthouse in the gathering dark. "I am right here." His bones began to crack. It was slower than before, less violent, but no less terrifying. Fur sprouted along his arms. His fingers curled, nails thickening. A wave of primal energy of raw wolf surged down the bond toward Claire. It wasn't malicious. It was pure, untamed instinct. To run, to hunt, to protect, to dominate. It threatened to overwhelm her senses. The world sharpened. She could smell the dust in the stone, the fear in her own sweat, the unique signature of every person in the distant halls. Sounds magnified. Her own heartbeat was a drum. No, she pushed back, not against the wolf, but against the chaos. She focused on the anchor points, the feel of his knees under her hands, the steady rhythm of her own breath, the image of his human eyes. She built a wall of quiet certainty around the core of him, a sanctuary for the man inside the storm. The transformation stuttered. The fur receded from one arm, then grew back. His jaw lengthened, then snapped back with a pained gasp. He was caught, truly caught, in the no-man's land between forms, the broken door swinging wildly. Agony, sharp and bright, flashed from him to her. Claire cried out, her grip tightening. The wolf mind, confused and in pain, latched onto her presence. It didn't see a human. It saw mate, safe harbor, home. With a final, wrenching shudder, the change resolved. But not into the monstrous, hybrid form of the medbay. Not into a full, feral wolf. Kneeling before her, panting heavily, was a massive, majestic wolf with a coat of storm cloud gray and eyes of intelligent, luminous gold. It was Noah's wolf, fully realized, and in its gaze she saw not mindless fury but a fierce, focused recognition. He had done it. A controlled, voluntary shift. The wolf lowered its great head and nudged her bandaged hand with its cold, wet nose. A gesture of apology, of thanks. Relief, sweet and dizzying, flooded Claire. She laughed, a breathless, tearful sound, and buried her fingers in the thick fur of his neck. The bond sang between them, clear and strong, a bridge firmly built. The door wasn't fixed, but it was open, and they were on the same side of it. The moment of triumph was shattered by the sound of shattering glass from somewhere deep within the estate, followed by a scream that was abruptly cut off. Then, a howl, not one of theirs, pierced the night, close, too close, from inside the walls. The golden eyes of Noah's wolf snapped toward the door, a growl building in its chest that vibrated through the floor. The Ridgecrest pack wasn't just at the border. They were already inside. The triumphant silence after Noah's first controlled shift shattered like glass. The sound wasn't from the distant border. It was close. Too close. A guttural snarl, a crash of splintering wood, and a human shout of alarm erupted from somewhere deep within the estate's main body. The attack wasn't coming. It was already here. Noah's head snapped up, his amber wolf eyes narrowing. A low, vibrating growl built in his chest, a sound of pure territorial fury. Claire felt the shift in him through the bond. The focused control he just mastered was instantly overridden by a surge of protective, violent instinct. The estate is breached. His voice, rough and layered with the wolf's timbre, growled in her mind. "Liam," Claire breathed, the name a bolt of pure terror. He was in the nursery with a guard, but if they were inside? Before she could form the thought, Noah was moving. In a fluid, powerful motion, he turned and bolted for the door of his quarters, his massive wolf form a streak of midnight fur. He didn't look back, but the bond pulled taut between them, a psychic leash that yanked at Claire's core, compelling her to follow. "Wait!" she cried, scrambling after him, her bare feet slapping on the polished floor. He didn't pause. The heavy reinforced door was already open a crack. He hit it with his shoulder, bursting it wide, and vanished into the corridor. Claire reached the doorway, her heart hammering against her ribs. The hallway was chaos. Smoke, acrid and chemical, not fire, hazed the air. An alarm blared a piercing, rhythmic shriek. From the direction of the grand staircase, she heard the distinct, horrifying sounds of combat. The wet thud of impact, another bestial roar, and a pained yelp that was decidedly canine. Noah was already gone, a shadow streaking toward the violence. "Claire!" Cassandra's voice cut through the din. The security head appeared from a side passage, a handgun held in a professional two-handed grip, her face a mask of grim focus. A long, bleeding scratch marred her cheek. "With me. Now, Liam is the primary target. Noah will be heading there. Our job is to get to the secure room. Move." Cassandra didn't wait for agreement. She grabbed Claire's arm and pulled her into a run, away from the sounds of battle, down a narrower service corridor. Claire's mind raced, her lungs burning. The bond was a live wire, thrumming with Noah's rage and lethal intent. She could feel him moving, a blazing star of fury cutting through the house. "How did they get in?" Claire gasped as they ran. Wolfsbane gas canisters through the ventilation on the lower level, disoriented the perimeter guards. Then a direct, hard breach through the west terrace doors. A small, elite team. They're not here for a full assault. They're here for a snatch and grab. Cassandra's words were clipped. Andrew is making his move. The nursery wing was just ahead. The door to Liam's suite was closed, but the guard who should have been posted outside was gone. A dark smear on the wall hinted at why. Cassandra pushed Claire behind her, raising her gun. She listened for a second, then kicked the door open. The sitting room was a wreck. A table was overturned, books scattered. The door to Liam's bedroom was closed, and standing between them and it, breathing heavily, was Bradley. The beta's shirt was torn, his knuckles raw and bloody. At his feet lay a still form in dark tactical gear. A Ridgecrest wolf, in human form, with a vicious neck wound. Bradley's eyes, glowing faintly gold, locked onto them. "Cassandra, Claire," he straightened, his body tense. "They came for the boy, two of them, took care of one. The other got past me into the bedroom." A whimper of pure fear escaped Claire. She tried to surge forward, but Cassandra's arm barred her way, her gaze fixed on Bradley. "You let one past." Cassandra's voice was dangerously calm. "He was fast. I was dealing with his partner," Bradley growled, a defensive edge in his tone. He took a step toward Liam's door. "We need to get him out, now." Something in the bond twisted. A spike of warning, not from Noah's direction, but a cold, intuitive dread that was all her own. Claire's eyes darted from Bradley's bloody hands to the dead intruder, to the closed door. The pieces clicked with horrifying clarity. If only I had known then that the greatest threats don't always come from outside the walls. "No," Claire said, the word quiet but sharp. Both werewolves turned to look at her. Cassandra's gaze was questioning. Bradley's was impatient. "Claire, we don't have time for—" "You said two came in," Claire interrupted, her voice gaining strength, fueled by a cold rush of certainty from the bond. It wasn't speaking in words, but in feelings, a deep, instinctual distrust. "You killed one. Where's the other one's body, Bradley?" Bradley froze. His eyes flickered, the gold dimming for a fraction of a second. "What?" "There's only one body," Claire pressed, stepping out from behind Cassandra. "You said the other got past you into the bedroom, but if he's in there with Liam, why is it so quiet?" The silence from Liam's room was deafening. Cassandra's gun, slowly, imperceptibly, began to shift its aim from the center of the room toward Bradley. "Beta," she said, her voice like ice. "Answer the mate." Bradley's face underwent a subtle transformation. The harried, protective expression melted away, replaced by a look of weary resignation. "Clever human," he sighed. "I'd hoped to avoid this mess." What happened next? Bradley moved, but not toward them. He moved toward the wall beside Liam's door and slammed his fist against a hidden panel. A section of the wall hissed open, revealing not a secret passage, but a compact control unit with a single, large red button. "A contingency," Bradley said, his back to them. "Andrew pays better for live delivery, but a dead air and a destabilized Alpha works too." "Bradley, don't," Cassandra roared, firing. The shot was loud in the confined space. Bradley jerked, a bloom of red appearing on his shoulder. But his hand came down on the button. A deafening whump came from inside Liam's bedroom, followed by the sound of shattering glass and a rush of expanding gas. Wolfsbane. Concentrated, aerosolized wolfsbane flooding the sealed room. A tiny, choked cough sounded from within. "Liam!" Claire screamed, her protective instinct obliterating all fear. She lunged, ignoring Cassandra's shout, ignoring Bradley, and threw herself at the bedroom door. The handle was locked. She battered against it with her fists. From the corridor behind them came an earth-shaking roar of pure, unadulterated agony. It was a sound that bypassed the ears and vibrated directly in the soul. Noah. He'd felt it. Through the pack bonds, through the mate bond with Claire, he'd felt his son's distress. The bond between Claire and Noah became a conduit of shared, blinding panic. It was a white-hot torrent that seared away all thought, leaving only a single, primal command: save the cub. Claire's vision swam. The world narrowed to the door, to the toxic gas seeping from under it, to the faint, weakening coughs from her boy. Her hand, still bandaged from the claiming bite, slammed against the wood. And this time something answered. Not from her, from the mark on her wrist. A surge of power, ancient and wild, shot up her arm. It wasn't her strength, it was his. It was Noah's alpha power, channeled through the bond, through the claim he had placed upon her. With a crack that echoed like gunfire, the door's lock splintered. The heavy wood flew inward. The room was a fog of green-tinged gas. Claire saw the outline of the shattered canister in the center of the room. She saw the small, huddled form on the floor by the bed, clutching his stuffed wolf. She didn't breathe. She plunged into the cloud. The effect was instantaneous and vicious. It felt like inhaling ground glass and acid. Her throat and lungs screamed in protest. Her eyes burned, tears streaming down her face. But she was moving, driven by a force greater than pain. She scooped Liam up, his small body limp in her arms, and turned, staggering back toward the doorway. Cassandra was there, in the clear air of the sitting room, grappling with a now fully shifted Bradley, a massive, tawny-colored wolf with cold, intelligent eyes. They were a whirlwind of fang and claw. "G.O.," Cassandra snarled, using all her strength to shove the beta wolf back, giving Claire a clear path into the corridor. Claire stumbled out, Liam clutched to her chest. She fell to her knees in the hallway, gasping for clean air, her body racked with coughs. Liam wasn't coughing anymore. His face was pale, his lips tinged with blue. "No, no, no, baby, breathe," she sobbed, patting his cheek. "Liam, please." A shadow fell over them. Claire looked up, terror seizing her anew. It was Noah, but not the man, and not the controlled wolf from the quarters. This was the feral beast from the forest, the one consumed by rage and pain. His black fur was bristling. His muzzle was drawn back in a snarl that revealed deadly fangs, and his amber eyes held no trace of human recognition. They were fixed on the toxic gas billowing from the nursery, on the sounds of battle, on his limp son. He saw a threat. All of it was a threat. He took a step toward Claire and Liam, a deep, unstable growl rumbling from him. It was the sound of a creature pushed to the very edge of sanity. The bond was a storm of red-tinged fury. Claire could feel his wolf mind. Danger. Death. Protect. Destroy. He was moments from losing himself completely, from possibly seeing even them as part of the danger that had harmed his pup. Claire, choking on wolfsbane and despair, did the only thing she could. She wrapped her arms tighter around Liam and looked directly into the feral wolf's eyes. She poured every ounce of her will, her love for the child in her arms, her desperate need for him, for Noah, to come back down the bond. She didn't speak. She projected. A memory, Liam's laughter in the garden, the feel of Noah's human hand gentle on her cheek after the claiming, the solid, anchoring promise of the bond itself. She sent a wave of pure, defiant connection through the chaos of his rage. The feral wolf halted. The savage growl hitched. The blazing amber eyes blinked, and for a second, a flicker of tortured, familiar awareness shone through. Claire. His voice in her mind was a ragged whisper, a man clinging to a cliff's edge. Inside the nursery, there was a final, brutal crunch and a canine whine that cut off abruptly. Cassandra emerged, breathing hard, her clothes torn, blood dripping from a gash on her arm. Bradley's tawny wolf form lay still behind her. She took in the scene, the feral alpha, the poisoned air, the human mate on her knees. Her face hardened with a grim resolve. "Alpha," Cassandra said, her voice commanding, cutting through the alarm's wail. "The immediate threat is neutralized. Your mate has your son. He needs the antidote. Now." The word antidote seemed to penetrate the red haze. Noah's wolf form shuddered violently. The air around him crackled with painful energy. Bones began to snap and reform, fur receding with agonizing slowness. It was a forced, brutal shift back to human form, driven by sheer will and the anchor Claire provided. He collapsed to his hands and knees, naked, human, his body heaving with the trauma of the shift and the psychic poison of the wolfsbane affecting him through the pack bonds. He lifted his head, his eyes now fully human, dark with pain and fear. "Liam," he rasped. "He's not breathing well," Claire cried, her own voice hoarse from the gas. Noah staggered to his feet, swaying. He stumbled to them and took Liam from Claire's arms with a tenderness that belied his violent return. His large hand cradled his son's head. "Med Bay, antidote is there. Cassandra, secure the estate. Find every last one of them." Cassandra nodded, already tapping her earpiece, barking orders. Noah looked at Claire, his gaze sweeping over her soot-streaked face, her burning eyes. The bond hummed with a shared, desperate urgency. "Can you walk?" she nodded, pushing herself up. Her legs felt like water, her lungs on fire, but she would crawl if she had to. They moved as a unit, a broken, desperate family, down the smoke-hazed corridors toward the medical suite. The sounds of sporadic fighting still echoed through the estate, but the heart of the attack had been here, in the nursery. In the sterile brightness of the med bay, a pack doctor, a werewolf named Elias, sprang into action. He took Liam, laid him on a gurney, and administered a clear injection to his small arm. An oxygen mask was placed over his face. "The gas was concentrated," Elias said, his voice tight. "He's young. His system is struggling." Noah stood rigid, a statue of anguish, watching the slow, shallow rise and fall of his son's chest. Claire moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his. Their fingers laced together, the contact strengthening the bond, a silent exchange of strength. Minutes ticked by, each one an eternity. Slowly, so slowly, the blue tinge began to fade from Liam's lips. His breathing deepened, becoming less ragged. A soft, weak cough escaped the mask. A shuddering breath ripped from Noah. He bent, resting his forehead against the cool metal of the gurney's rail. The door to the medbay hissed open. Cassandra entered, her expression graver than ever. She ignored the medical scene for a moment, her eyes going to her alpha and his mate, their joined hands. "Report," Noah said, not lifting his head. "The breach is contained. 6 Ridgecrest operatives, all dead. We lost 2 of our own. Bradley," she paused, the betrayal a bitter taste. "His body has been secured. He activated a failsafe system we didn't know existed. A wolfsbane dispersion trap installed in the nursery during the last renovations. Renovations he oversaw." Noah's grip on Claire's hand tightened until her bones ached. "He was their inside man," Claire whispered, the final piece slotting into place. "The wolfsbane in my room, it wasn't just to frame me. It was to test security, to see how we'd react." Cassandra gave a sharp nod. "It appears so. His motivation is unclear, but his allegiance was not to us." She took a step closer, her voice dropping. "Alpha, while we were mopping up, a message was delivered to the main gate by a human courier who knew nothing." Noah finally looked up, his eyes dark pits. "What message?" Cassandra held out a single, plain white envelope. "It's addressed to Claire." A cold dread, separate from the fear for Liam, trickled down Claire's spine. She took the envelope with trembling fingers. It felt unnaturally heavy. She broke the seal and pulled out a thick, expensive card. The handwriting was elegant, cruel, and familiar. "Dearest Claire, a valiant effort today. Truly, you saved the pup. You anchored your feral mate. You even uncovered my little helper. I am impressed. But games must end. You have something I want. I have something you need. You have my brother's heart, flawed as it is. I have the means to shatter it forever. I propose a trade. A simple one. You, for the permanent antidote to the neurotoxic variant of wolfsbane now circulating in your precious Liam's bloodstream. The injection he just received is a temporary stabilizer. It will last 48 hours. After that, well, children are so fragile. Come to the border clearing at moonrise tomorrow. Alone. If you involve Noah, if you bring his pack, the antidote will be destroyed. And you will watch the light in that boy's eyes fade for good. Choose wisely, little mate. Yours, in anticipation, Andrew." The card fluttered from Claire's numb fingers. The world tilted. She looked at Liam, sleeping peacefully now, unknowingly on a timer. She looked at Noah, who had snatched the fallen note, his face bleaching of all color as he read it. The bond between them, flooded with his volcanic, helpless rage and her own icy, crystallizing despair. Andrew hadn't just attacked their home. He had poisoned their future. And he had given Claire an impossible choice: sacrifice herself or condemn the child she loved to a slow, agonizing death. Noah crushed the note in his fist, a raw, broken sound tearing from his throat. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw not the alpha, but a father facing his worst nightmare. The unspoken question hung in the toxic air between them, more terrifying than any snarl. What do we do now? The ultimatum hung in the antiseptic air of the medical suite, a poison more potent than the one in Liam's veins. Herself for the antidote. Alone at the border in 48 hours. Claire's hand, still resting on Noah's heaving chest, felt the violent tremor that went through him at the message. It wasn't a tremor of fear, but of a rage so profound it threatened to shatter the fragile human form he'd just reclaimed. No. The word was a guttural scrape from Noah's throat. He tried to sit up, his muscles corded and shaking with the effort. Dr. Elias placed a firm, cautious hand on his shoulder. "Alpha, you must not." The forced shift, the wolfsbane exposure in the air. Your system is in shock. He has poisoned my son, Noah snarled, his eyes flashing with that dangerous lupin gold. His gaze found Claire's, and the possessive fury in them was tempered by a stark, terrifying fear. And he thinks to claim my mate. Cassandra, her knuckles white where she gripped her tactical tablet, spoke from the doorway. It's a trap, a transparent one. He doesn't want to trade. He wants you to follow her, Alpha, or for her to walk into his arms, so he can finish what he started at the ravine. Turn her, use her to kill you. The memory of Andrew's plan, transmitted through the psychic link, was cold in Claire's mind. She looked at Liam, asleep on a gurney, an IV delivering the temporary antidote that was merely slowing the toxin, not stopping it. His small chest rose and fell too quickly. A sheen of sweat coated his pale forehead. "What happens when the temporary antidote wears off?" Claire asked, her voice surprisingly steady. Elia's face was grim. "The neurotoxin attacks the autonomic nervous system. In a child, and in a werewolf whose healing is already compromised by wolfsbane respiratory failure. Cardiac arrest. It will be swift. We have perhaps 36 hours before the stopgap measure." A cold, practical clarity descended upon Claire, cutting through the fear. It was the same clarity that had helped her smash through a sealed door. Action, reaction, consequence. So we have until tomorrow night. Does he really expect me to just walk out there? He expects Noah to be ruled by emotion, Cassandra said, her tone clipped. To either send you out in a desperate bid to save Liam or to charge the border himself in a rage, leaving the pack vulnerable. Either way, he wins. Bradley's betrayal was just the first move. This is the checkmate. Noah growled, low and continuous, the sound vibrating through Claire's palm. She could feel the wolf surging against the thin walls of his control, howling at the threat to its pup and its mate. The mate bond between them was a live wire, humming with his fury and her chilling resolve. "Then we don't do either," Claire said. All eyes turned to her. Noah's glare was incendiary. "You are not going to him." "I didn't say I was." She took a deep breath, the plan forming as she spoke, pieces clicking into place with an unnerving certainty. It felt less like thought and more like something pulling at the bond, guiding her. He's watching the border. He's expecting a desperate move from you or a naive one from me. What is he not expecting? Cassandra's analytical eyes narrowed. A coordinated strike from a pack whose alpha is incapacitated. But he's not, Claire said, pressing her hand more firmly against Noah's chest. She felt his heartbeat sync with hers, a slow, deliberate drumming. "Not if I'm here. You said it yourself, Cassandra. I'm the key. I calmed the feral wolf. I brought him back. The bond is a tether." She looked at Noah, holding his wild gaze. "You can't change, not fully. The instability is too great. But what if you didn't have to? What if the wolf didn't need to be caged, just directed?" The medical suite was silent except for the beep of Liam's monitor. The audacity of her suggestion hung in the air. "You propose," Noah said, each word strained, "to use the mate bond as a leash, to take me like a weapon to the border." "I propose," Claire corrected, her voice softening, "that we go together. Not you following me, not me going to him. We go, the alpha and his claimed mate, to answer his challenge. He thinks he's split your focus, your child or your mate. We show him there the same focus. We show him the bond is not a weakness." The sound that escaped Noah was part groan, part approving rumble. The gold in his eyes flickered. The idea appealed to the wolf, to the deep-seated need to stand with his mate against a threat. But the man, the strategist, saw the abyss of risk. The instability, Claire, if I lose control there at the border, surrounded by enemies and wolfsbane. "You won't," she said, with a conviction she didn't fully feel. "Because I won't let you. You trusted me to guide you to Liam in the forest. Trust me now. What happened next would change everything. The decision was etched in the stark lines of Noah's face. He looked from Liam's fragile form to Claire's determined eyes, and the war within him settled into a cold, hard resolve. "Cassandra," he said, his voice finally gaining a measure of its old alpha steel. "Mobilize the pack, full defensive perimeter. No one moves on Ridgecrest territory. This is not a pack war. Not yet." He turned his head painfully toward the doctor. "Elias, you have 24 hours. Find a way to extend the temporary antidote. Synthesize something. I don't care what it takes." He finally looked back at Claire, his hand coming up to cover hers on his chest. His skin was fever-hot. "We go at dusk tomorrow, not to the meeting point. We flank it. We take the fight to him on our terms." His fingers tightened. "You will stay behind me. You will not engage. Your only task is to hold the line. My line. Do you understand?" She nodded, the weight of it crushing and exhilarating. "I understand." If only I had known how thin that line truly was. The next 24 hours were a study in controlled chaos. The Blackwood estate, already on high alert, transformed into a fortress. Claire moved through it like a ghost, pulled in two directions. She spent hours by Liam's side, reading to his unconscious form, wiping his brow, her heart clenching with every labored breath he took. The mate bond was a dull, anxious ache, a reflection of Noah's own torment from the Alpha's quarters where he prepared. Cassandra found her there in the late afternoon. "He's asking for you." Claire followed her through the secured corridors. The atmosphere was thick with tension and the scent of worried wolves. She heard snippets of conversation, felt the stares. The human mate, the catalyst, can she really do it? Noah was not in bed. He stood at the window of his quarters, dressed in simple, dark clothes that could be easily shredded. His posture was rigid, every muscle taut with the effort of containment. The setting sun painted him in hues of fire and blood. "Claire!" He didn't turn. "Can you feel it?" She didn't need to ask what he meant. She stepped into the room, and the bond surged, a tidal pull. The chaotic, frenetic energy she'd felt in him before was now focused into a single, razor-sharp point, a simmering, predatory readiness. She could also feel the fragility beneath it, like fault lines in granite. "I feel you," she said simply. He turned then. His eyes were human, but the intensity in them was not. "The wolf is close, closer than it has ever been without the moon. The poison, the rage, it's a constant pressure. I need you to know what you're anchoring." He took a step toward her, and the air seemed to thicken. "If the bond breaks, if your focus wavers, or if the wolfsbane overwhelms me, I may not know you. The wolf will see only threats." Claire held her ground, lifting her chin. "The bond won't break." A faint, grim smile touched his lips. "Confident." "It's not confidence," she said, closing the distance between them. She placed her hand over his heart, as she had in the med bay. The connection snapped into hyperclarity. She could feel the coiling spring tension of his muscles, the double-time beat of his heart, the hot, dark swirl of the wolf's consciousness just beneath his skin. "It's fact. I'm yours, you're mine. That's the line. He can't cross it." Noah's hand came up to cradle her jaw, his thumb stroking the mark his teeth had left on her neck. A possessive gesture, a reassuring one. The contact sent a shockwave of calm and certainty through the bond, from her into him. He let out a shuddering breath, his shoulders relaxing a fraction. "You are remarkable," he murmured, his forehead touching hers. For a moment they just breathed together, the bond humming a quiet, potent harmony between them. The moment was shattered by a sharp knock. Cassandra entered, her face all business. "It's time. The scouts report Andrew is at the designated meeting point with a small contingent. 6 wolves. He's waiting. Our route is clear." Noah straightened, the mask of the alpha slamming back into place. The brief vulnerability was gone, replaced by lethal intent. He looked at Claire. "Ready?" She thought of Liam, fighting for breath in a sterile room. She thought of Andrew's smug voice in her mind, his hands on her. She felt the steady, ferocious strength in the bond. Ready. The forest at dusk was a world of long shadows and eerie silence. They moved on foot, Noah a silent phantom ahead of her, Claire doing her best to mimic his stealth. Cassandra and 2 other pack members flanked them at a distance, a silent protective detail under strict orders not to intervene unless Claire was directly threatened. The air grew colder as they neared the eastern border. Claire began to feel it, a creeping, invasive pressure that was not Noah's. It was a familiar psychic static, a greasy fingerprint on her mind. Andrew, he was close, and he was impatient. Noah stopped behind a thicket of hawthorn, holding up a closed fist. Claire froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. He pointed through a break in the foliage. Below them was a narrow, rocky gully, the official Blackwood Ridgecrest border. In the center of the clearing on the other side, Andrew stood, illuminated by the last bloody rays of the sun. He looked relaxed, hands in his pockets. 5 large, grim-faced wolves were positioned around him. A 6th held a small, metallic case. The antidote. The sight of it sent a jolt through Claire. Noah's hand found her wrist, his grip a warning and a comfort. Steady. "Noah!" Andrew's voice rang out, taunting and clear in the twilight. "I know you're out there, brother, lurking in the shadows. Where's my little prize? I don't see her. Tick-tock. The child's time runs faster than you think." Claire felt the growl build in Noah's chest through the bond. She focused, pouring a stream of calm, of focus, back into him. Not yet. Wait. "You always were sentimental," Andrew continued, pacing slowly. "A stolen mate, a human whelp, a pretty little nanny. You attach leashes to yourself and call it strength. I'm offering to cut one loose. Give me the woman and the boy lives. It's the only logical move." Noah leaned close to Claire's ear, his breath a warm whisper. "The bond. Can you feel his pattern, his attention?" Claire closed her eyes, shutting out the visual. She reached not for Noah, but for that other, unwelcome connection. The psychic link was faint, blocked by Noah's proximity and her own will, but it was there. She felt Andrew's focus, a sharp, eager blade of anticipation aimed at the gully, waiting for a solitary figure to appear. He was not looking to his flanks. He was confident, arrogant. She opened her eyes and nodded to Noah. "He's only watching the front." Noah's smile was a flash of white in the gloom. "Good." He moved. It wasn't the explosive, monstrous shift of a full transformation. It was something else. A fluid, terrifying blur of speed and power that was more than human but not quite wolf. He seemed to melt into the shadows, using the terrain with an inhuman grace. Claire held her position, her every sense tethered to the bond. It was a taut cable, humming with lethal purpose. She watched as Noah, a streak of darkness, circled far to the left, using the sound of the wind in the pines to mask his movement. Andrew's patience snapped. "Enough. Bring her out, Noah, or I walk away with the cure and you can listen to your son choke." One of Andrew's betas, the one with the case, shifted nervously. It was the opening. Noah struck from the Ridgecrest pack's blind side, a silent avalanche of fury. He didn't go for Andrew. He went for the beta with the case. The sound was brutal, efficient, a snap of bone, a choked-off yelp. The metallic case flew from the beta's grip, skittering across the rocks toward the gully. Chaos erupted. Andrew roared in fury, spinning to face the threat. "Kill him!" The 4 remaining Ridgecrest wolves lunged. Noah met them not as a wolf, but as something in between, a nightmare of strength and speed, his hands tipped with claws that ripped through fur and flesh. Claire watched, her blood turning to ice, as he moved with a vicious, economical precision. He was holding the wolf at bay, but its ferocity was in every move. The Bond screamed with battle frenzy, with pain as claws found his shoulder, with the raw, red joy of the fight. Claire clutched at a tree root, anchoring herself, pushing back against the torrent with every ounce of her will. Calm, focus, control. She was a lighthouse in the storm of his rage, beaming a steady signal. Andrew, seeing his wolves struggling, let out a snarl of his own and began to change. Bone cracked, fur sprouted, a deliberate, controlled shift into a massive, silver-flecked wolf. But Noah had the case. He kicked it hard, sending it sliding down into the gully toward the Blackwood side. Claire, now. It was her cue. She broke from cover, scrambling down the rocky slope toward the glinting metal case. Her world narrowed to that case, to the lifeline inside. She was 10 feet from it when a wall of silver fur slammed into the ground before her, shaking the earth. Andrew, in his wolf form, blocked her path, his lips peeled back from teeth as long as her fingers. His yellow eyes glowed with triumph. He had anticipated this. The psychic link exploded open, Andrew's voice a venomous shout in her skull. Mine. Agony lanced through her temple, the old marking flaring like a brand. She stumbled, crying out. On the ridge above, Noah saw her fall. He saw Andrew looming over her. And the line, the precious, thin line of control that Claire had been holding for him, snapped. A howl tore from Noah's throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror and rage that didn't sound even remotely human. The last vestiges of his form dissolved in a whirlwind of snapping bone and erupting fur. This was not the controlled partial shift. This was the feral wolf, the monster from the medbay, unleashed by the ultimate threat to its mate. The two wolves he was fighting were thrown aside like ragdolls. Andrew turned from Claire, his triumph shifting to wary calculation as he faced the charging, fully transformed beast that was his brother. This was what he wanted. Noah, feral, uncontrollable. Claire, gasping through the pain in her head, saw it too. Saw Noah's beautiful, intelligent eyes swallowed by mindless, amber fury. The mate bond was still there, but it was a storm of howling wind and lightning, a chaotic scream that offered no purchase. She crawled, her fingers scraping on stone, closing around the handle of the case. She had the antidote. But above her, the two massive wolves collided with an impact that sounded like a car crash. Teeth flashed, claws ripped. It was a savage, brutal dance. Andrew was fighting strategically, aiming to wound, to tire. Noah, the feral beast, fought only to destroy. Claire clutched the case to her chest, her mind racing. The bond was a maelstrom. She couldn't calm this. She couldn't leash it. Despair began to creep in. Then, through the chaotic noise of the bond, she felt it. A tiny, familiar pulse. Not from Noah, from the east, from deep within Ridgecrest territory. It was a pulse of pain, of fear, and of a strange, desperate calling. It was the same psychic signature as Andrew's, but softer, muffled, imprisoned. And in that instant, as the brothers tore at each other under the rising moon, Claire finally understood the truth behind Andrew's hatred. It wasn't just about a stolen mate. Someone was being held against their will in the heart of the Ridgecrest pack. And that prisoner was screaming silently for help. The psychic scream wasn't Andrew's. It was a woman's. A raw, silent shriek of agony and despair that echoed through the psychic mark like a crack in the world. It came from the heart of Ridgecrest territory. Help me, please. The plea was a ghost in my skull, and it changed everything. Claire! Noah's roar was half-beast, a sound of pure rage that shook the leaves from the trees. He had Andrew pinned, his massive, silver-furred form a blur of fangs and fury. But Andrew was laughing, even as blood matted his fur. She feels it, doesn't she? Andrew snarled, his voice a guttural parody of human speech. The family resemblance. You took everything, brother. Now I'll take your new toy and break her mind beside her. The captive's pains spiked, a white-hot lance through my temple. I stumbled, the precious metal case of antidote clutched to my chest. A stolen mate, under compulsion. Andrew's old accusation against Noah rang in my memory with horrifying new clarity. What if the truth was the opposite? Noah's jaws snapped an inch from Andrew's throat. He was pure feral instinct, the bond between us a thin, straining thread vibrating with his rage. I couldn't let him kill Andrew. Not yet. Not until we knew. I did the only thing I could think of. I slammed my own will down the mate bond, not to calm, but to command. It wasn't a gentle pull. It was a psychic shout, fueled by the captive's despair and my own desperate certainty. Noah, stop. The effect was instantaneous and violent. The great wolf froze, a tremor running through his powerful frame. His glowing amber eyes, fixed on Andrew's throat, flicked to me. In that split second of hesitation, Andrew twisted free, a deep gash across his shoulder. "You see," Andrew panted, scrambling back toward his own tree line. "She controls you. A human leash on the mighty Alpha. You're already dead, Noah. The pack will never follow a pet." I ignored him, focusing everything on Noah through the bond. I pushed images, not words. The woman's psychic cry, the sense of imprisonment. A question, who is she? Noah's snarl died in his throat. The feral glow in his eyes wavered, confusion battling the bloodlust. He took a shuddering step back from Andrew, toward me. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Andrew saw his opening crumbling. His eyes, burning with hatred, locked on me. "Fine, keep the antidote. It's a temporary solution. The poison is slow, but it's rooted. The child dies in 3 days without the master antidote from my own labs." A cruel smile stretched his muzzle. "You want the cure. You want to know who's screaming in your pretty little head. Bring her to me, at the full moon, at the place where it all began. Come alone, Claire, or watch the boy fade and listen to my guest scream forever." He melted into the shadows of the Ridgecrest woods, his final words hanging in the twilight air. Come alone. The silence that followed was deafening. The bond was a storm of Noah's conflict, protectiveness, fury, and a dawning, horrified realization. The wolf form began to shudder, bones cracking and reknitting in a grotesque, rapid reversal. He didn't have control. The shift was being ripped from him by emotional turmoil. He collapsed to his knees on the rocky ground, naked, human and gasping, his body a canvas of fresh scars and old wounds. I ran to him, dropping the case to cradle his face. His eyes were wild, human but unseeing. "The clearing," he rasped, his voice shredded. "The full moon. He means the clearing where we fought where Ilara—" He couldn't finish. The name, Ilara, hung between us, and the psychic mark in my mind gave a sympathetic throb. "She's alive," I whispered, the truth settling like a stone in my gut. "Andrew's mate, the one you thought you stole, he has her. He's been keeping her." Noah's head bowed, a shudder of utter defeat racking his shoulders. All this time. My hatred, my guilt, it was her prison. He looked up at me, his gaze clear for the first time. "And he wants to trade you for her." The walk back to the estate was a silent funeral march. The antidote case was heavy in my hand. We'd won the battle, secured Liam's reprieve, but the war had just twisted into something far more personal and vile. Cassandra met us at the tree line, her team fanning out. She took one look at our faces and knew. Bradley was just the tool, she stated, her voice cold. This was always about more than territory. In the medbay, Elias administered the master antidote to Liam. The relief as the child's labored breathing eased was a physical warmth in the room. Liam clung to me, his small body trembling. "The bad man's crying lady is sad," he mumbled into my neck, his innate pack senses picking up the echoes of the psychic trauma. "I know, sweetheart," I whispered, holding him tight. "We're going to help her." Over the next 2 days, the estate became a war room. Maps of Ridgecrest territory were spread across the Alpha's study. Noah, moving with a stiff, pained grace, was a different kind of alpha. The feral instability was banked, replaced by a cold, focused fury. The bond hummed with it, a sharp, relentless purpose. "He'll be expecting a trap," Cassandra said, pointing to the clearing on the map. "He wants Claire alone to break Noah's spirit publicly, to prove his dominance. He'll have his whole pack there." "I won't send her in alone," Noah growled, his fist clenching on the table. "You have to." The words left my mouth before I could reconsider. Everyone turned to stare. "It's the only way he'll bring Alara out. It's the only way we can get to her. And Liam needs the full cure. He said it himself. This is just a reprieve." The argument that followed was volcanic. Noah refused. Cassandra advocated for a full-scale assault. But the logic was a trap. An assault would guarantee Alara's death and Liam's. Andrew held all the pieces. If only I had known how deep his madness truly ran. On the afternoon before the full moon, I found Noah in our quarters, staring out at the gathering woods. The bond was a quiet hum of dread and resolve. "I can feel her," I said softly, joining him. "Alara, it's faint, but she's waiting. Hoping." He didn't look at me. "He compelled her, decades ago, made her believe she was his mate. I challenged him, tried to break the compulsion, I failed. She ran from us both. I thought she'd died. All this time he had her, torturing her, blaming me." His voice broke. "And now he wants to do the same to you." I took his hand, lacing my fingers through his. The claiming bite on my shoulder pulsed warmly. "He can't. The bond is sealed. His mark hurts, but it can't overwrite this. I'm yours." I said it with a certainty that surprised me. "And you are mine. That's our advantage. He doesn't understand the bond. He thinks it's a weakness. It's not. It's a tether. Wherever I go, you're with me." He finally turned, his amber eyes searching mine. In them, I saw the alpha, the father, the man, and the wolf, all unified by a single, terrifying fear. "If he hurts you—" "He won't get the chance," I promised, though I had no idea how to keep it. The full moon rose, a bloated silver coin in a clear, cold sky. I stood at the edge of the Blackwood tree line, wearing simple, dark clothes. No weapons. They were useless anyway. My only armor was the bond. A live wire stretching back to where Noah, Cassandra, and a select strike team waited, poised to move on my signal. A specific surge of fear down the bond. The clearing was just as I remembered from my vision. Rocky, open, bathed in eerie moonlight. Andrew stood in the center, not in wolf form, but as a man, exuding a calm, triumphant malice. Beside him, held loosely by 2 hulking Ridgecrest betas, was a woman. Alara. She was gaunt, her hair lank, dressed in a thin shift. Her eyes were the most haunting part, wide, vacant, but with a flicker of acute awareness deep within. The psychic signature pouring from her was a river of quiet despair. When she saw me, that flicker ignited into a blaze of panic. "No, don't." "Punctual," Andrew called, his voice smooth. "I knew you had a hero complex. Where's my brother, cowering in the trees?" "I'm here as you asked," I said, my voice not shaking. "Alone, let Alara go. Give me the real cure for Liam." Andrew chuckled. "All in good time." He gestured, and one of the betas shoved Alara forward. She stumbled, falling to her knees in the frosty grass. "First, a demonstration of what happens to those who cross me." He raised a hand, not toward me, toward Alara. The psychic assault wasn't directed at me, but feeling its edges was like having my skull scoured with ice. Alara screamed, a raw, physical sound that tore the night air, her body convulsing. The pain echoed through the mark, doubling my own, and I cried out, falling to one knee. No. The denial roared down the bond from Noah, a wave of protective fury so potent it shook the trees at the clearing's edge. Andrew's head snapped up, his smile widening. Ah, not so alone, good. He lowered his hand, and Alara went limp, sobbing silently. Come out, brother, or I'll make her break her own mind. What happened next changed everything. Noah didn't emerge from the trees. A howl erupted, not from one location, but from all around the clearing. It was the Blackwood pack, a chorus of challenge. At the same moment, Cassandra's strike team, moving like ghosts, engaged the Ridgecrest perimeter guards. Snarls and the sounds of combat exploded in the woods. Andrew's triumph turned to snarl. Kill the woman! He barked to his betas, pointing at Alara, before his form blurred and shifted into his massive, dark-furred wolf. He launched himself not at the trees, but directly at me. Time slowed. I saw the beta raise a clawed hand over Alara's prone form. I saw Andrew's wolf, jaws wide, saliva gleaming in the moonlight, aimed for my throat. And I felt the bond, not as a tether, but as a conduit. I didn't pull Noah's rage. I pushed my will into it. I focused every ounce of love for Liam, every spark of defiance, every shred of protective fury for the broken woman on the ground, and I channeled it all down the bond to Noah with a single, clear command. Save Elara. I threw myself sideways as Andrew's jaws snapped shut on empty air. But I wasn't the story. The bond was. From the tree line, a silver streak shot forth. It wasn't the feral wolf. It was Noah, in a perfect, controlled hybrid form, the power of the beast wielded with the precision of the man. He moved with impossible speed, a blur of moonlight and fury. He hit the beta standing over Alara like a cannonball, sending the man flying into the rocks with a sickening crunch. The second beta turned, but Cassandra was there, a silver knife flashing. The fight became a chaos of fur and fang. Andrew, enraged at the diversion, rounded on me again. You first, then him, he roared psychically. But the momentary distraction was all I needed. I didn't run. I stood my ground, facing the monstrous wolf. I opened myself to the psychic mark he'd placed, the vile connection, and I poured into it not fear, but the full, overwhelming force of the mate bond, the stability, the certainty, the rightness of my bond with Noah. I showed him the memory of the claiming bite, the solidarity, the unbreakable tether. It was a psychic scream of pure connection, the antithesis of his isolation and control. Andrew recoiled as if scalded, a whimper escaping his throat. The compulsion he wielded was a tool of domination. What I showed him was a power born of mutual surrender. It was his kryptonite. In that second of his psychic shock, Noah was there. He placed himself between Andrew and me, a low, definitive growl rumbling in his chest. It's over, Andrew. The clearing fell silent. The Ridgecrest betas were subdued. Cassandra held Alara, who was watching with dawning, tear-filled awareness. The Blackwood warriors formed a ring. Andrew shifted back to human form, panting, his madness undimmed. Nothing is over. She was mine. You took her. You imprisoned her, Noah thundered, his own form shifting back to human, the hybrid power smoothing into muscle and rage. You broke her with compulsion. I tried to save her. My only sin was failing. He took a step toward his half-brother, his voice dropping, carrying across the silent clearing. I challenge you, Andrew Ridgecrest, for the Ridgecrest Alpha ship, for the freedom of your captive, for the crimes against my pack and my family. No weapons, no compulsion, wolf, to the death. It was the oldest law. Andrew, his eyes darting to his defeated betas, to Alara's awakening gaze, saw no escape. His pride, the very core of his madness, demanded he accept. The fight was swift and brutal. Two alphas, two brothers, their hatred given pure physical form. It was a whirlwind of claw and tooth under the cold eye of the full moon. But Noah fought with something Andrew had long since lost. A reason beyond himself. He fought for Liam, for Alara's freedom, for me. And he fought anchored. Every snarl of Andrew's, every trick, was met with a focused, controlled fury. I held the bond open, a steady stream of calm resolve, a lighthouse in his storm. When Andrew tried to feint, I felt Noah's instinct to overcommit and pushed a pulse of patience. When Andrew's desperation peaked, I sent a wave of strength. The end came when Andrew, bleeding and weakening, tried one last, desperate lunge for Noah's throat. Noah caught him midair, his jaws closing with final, terrible certainty on Andrew's own neck. There was a crack, a gush, and then silence. Andrew's body went limp. Noah dropped it, shifting back to human form amidst the gore. He stood, chest heaving, painted in his brother's blood, and looked first at Alara. The woman, supported by Cassandra, met his gaze. The vacancy was gone, replaced by a bottomless grief and a fragile, weary recognition. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Forgiveness, absolution. Then Noah's eye. He crossed the clearing, the pack parting for him. He didn't care about the blood, the victory, the new territory he'd just won. He stopped before me, his hands coming up to cradle my face, his thumbs wiping away tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. "You are my heart," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "My anchor, my mate." And there, under the full moon, surrounded by the aftermath of war, he kissed me. It was not a kiss of passion, but of covenant, of a future claimed from the jaws of darkness. Epilogue, 1 month later. The first snow dusted the grounds of the unified Blackwood estate. The Ridgecrest pack, under new leadership chosen from their own ranks who swore fealty to Noah, was being integrated. The process was tense, but Cassandra oversaw it with ruthless efficiency. In the sunlit conservatory, Liam laughed, his color fully restored, as he chased a sunbeam. Alara sat quietly in a chair nearby, wrapped in a blanket. The psychic scars were deep, and she rarely spoke, but she found solace in Liam's innocent energy and in the quiet safety of the territory. Her recovery was our silent vow. Noah stood beside me at the window, his arm around my waist. The bond was a quiet, warm hum, a settled thing. He no longer fought the shifts. The wolf and the man were in harmony, anchored by the tether we shared. "The council has recognized the unification," he said quietly, "and our mating." I leaned into him, watching our son play. "No more wars. There will always be challenges," he said, his lips brushing my temple. "But no more wars like that. We have something to protect now. A family." I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who was, by daylight, the father of the child I cared for, and by moonlight, my everything. My desire, my protector, my mate. "Yes," I said, smiling as Liam ran over to hug our legs. "We do." The end.